Good morning, or good day, or good evening, wherever you are on this planet. Richard's early. G'day, Richard. Good to see you, mate. On your mark, get set, wait. Always wait. G'day, Rob. Good to see you, mate. How much heat did everyone eat today? Oh, plenty. We're in this, the calorie heat. Yeah. Yes, I'll place myself in a bomb calorimeter later on just to get an explosive effect. Yes. See how much, energy I can generate, or heat, to be more precise. Make sure you're tracking your total heat in and out. Mm. Does that mean I have to put a device on the toilet just to measure my sort of flatulence as well and stuff like that? Okay, so I need to do an upgrade. Good to know. G'day, Tracy. Ah, yes. Always ready, Tracy. You should know. Shouldn't be even asking those sort of questions. You'll get me too excited. I ate my bacon and eggs hot, but my coffee was warm. Okay, you neglected your coffee. Is that what you're saying? I'm doing it wrong. Whatever works for you in that regard. Seb in New Zealand. About to down a 3-inch New Zealand ribeye. Sounds good. So you must be new. Yeah, thanks for joining this interesting crowd. Taurine and random sweating, not to be confused with the usual 50+ hormonal meltdown. What the fuck is this all about? Well, remember, taurine does have a sort of an effect of being an amino transporter. So you can actually bring in more aminos. So it could be basically the extra aminos that are actually tracking into the pool, the amino pool, which may be having that effect. So it does actually improve basically protein metabolism and assists with muscle protein synthesis. So it's probably just that as an effect. Sometimes we notice certain things. Most people basically, even I know Hello Kitty, she's actually noticed, she used to get all, very cold, and feel the cold. When she upped her protein, she actually was still struggling to get enough protein in, because there are rate limiting, there are enzymes, and there are also adaptations. So I said to her, add some taurine for other reasons as well, but to improve the gut motility, the gut function generally, because taurine plays an important role in the total gut regulation. So as a consequence, and also it actually reduces the amount generating bile that stays around for far longer than any other source, the glycine type. So taurine will create a bile sort of mixture that actually stays around longer, which cleanses the small intestine, reduces the bacterial load. Also, that means there's more for you. So there's a lot of things happening when you add taurine in terms of the physiology and stuff like that. And you probably notice more. Probably people that are younger probably don't notice it as much because they're endogenously producing to certain things. Their gut tends to be, relatively healthier than older people that have got more senescence, more damage and stuff like that. So they do notice the difference. And it's a bonus, you basically are actually, you're increasing because there's about a 20 to 35% sort of higher sort of thermic effect of protein, but obviously with an amino transport like taurine, pulling it a bit more in, you're actually increasing that to the higher end. So that's probably where it's coming from. It is summer after all, so it's sort of, you could say, magnifies the effect. Where in winter, you'll just feel warmer, which is great. Hello Kitty usually knows me. She goes, "You got no sense of cold." No, the combination of taurine supplementation and meat really make it very easy to go in shorts and t-shirt in winter for walks and stuff like that. So yeah, I've got a very good endurance. Or I do have genes, hypothermia type genes, so I do have some level of adaptation. But when I was doing like a therapeutic keto and all that, I was cold as. So it is a difference. Let's put it that way. Carnivore diet is way more important. And I do have some videos that I'm going to be doing this week, and it will actually elucidate some of this sort of stuff, or basically clear up some of this sort of state. There's been a lot of questions about, the sort of repeat nonsense and a whole lot of other crappy things that have been happening and people are talking about and stuff like that. So I sort of buckled down and actually made a couple of videos, as you can see. So that's only in the middle. There's a whole lot of other stuff, content that I've actually still have to make. So at the 161, I've got one on vitamin A, but then I've got taurine independent of human microbiota composition directly affects gut health. Then on the what minerals lower thyroid antibodies, there's another one on the antibody health, glucose versus animal protein, the sort of repeat nonsense. That's going to be a very interesting one. How bad is fiber to the human digestive system? Thyroid hormones and proteins, the vitamins, what vitamins reduce thyroid antibodies, blah 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 blah, and going on. So I've got a number of things coming up in that regards to cover a lot of those issues that people keep on talking about. Elizabeth, also from Mexico, she has a lot of there's a lot of people that are being influenced by Salad Boy and some of the repeat nonsense, and so this would probably help them with their sort of demystifying certain important, biological pathways and how these sort of things, the differences and why, some of the nonsense that's actually being perpetuated in terms of thyroid health and, the importance of, of protein and specifically certain stuff in the proteins. So that'll all be covered. We'll keep it a slight mystery until next week. So hope you enjoy those videos that are coming up. So I have, because of that prioritizing that, I have basically neglected some of the others. There are gut restoration type thing that's coming. I'm going to try and get it out towards the end of the week. No promises currently on that one. It's a work in progress trying to get so many things. Yes, busy. Yes, I am currently trying to. I mean, even the other one, which one that was the lowering. Yeah, what minerals lower. It's in two parts. I have to join those two together. Yeah, I have to remember to do that before I go over to Dad's today. So yeah, so that's ready to go, and I try and get that out on Tuesday. So it should take a couple of hours to basically, because it's not that long, so it should join them and normalize the audio, which is the other thing, because one of them's slightly different in audio, I noticed, which was a bit annoying. I'm going, it's a bit of a problem. So yeah, that's the thing about editing software and editing stuff, and yeah, there's always these little it's annoying, but yeah, I'm improving some of my editing skills and normalizing audio, so getting there. It is better than what it used to be. Some of my earlier stuff was, really the sound wasn't strong enough, or there was differences between parts of the video. So there was a few issues there. There was a bit of graininess behind, as guys that have been or girls and guys that have been around my sort of channel for some time, you know, some of the earlier stuff. A few problems there. G'day, Jonathan. HB, you've gone to lowercase? You were uppercase last week. You got to lowercase. Is that trying to confuse me? TGA's looking for the third stabbing. Yeah, I know. What's your opinion on mixing gene therapy with Novavax? I would not be combining the mRNA stuff at all. I wouldn't be. I would not take. I'd basically say no to the other stuff. Definitely no, no, no. Novavax, on the other hand, I've done on the efficacy on the phase 3 and all that. It's on paper, it's traditional. On paper, it is safer. It has some features, safety features, like the spike cleavage has been mutated so it doesn't cleave off and create a lot of foreign particles throughout the system. The other thing is it's got so if you don't get properly aspirated when they inject you, the actual prolines that are on the actual tip won't actually insert into anything, so they can't access the ACE2 receptor. So pretty much, and then it will be cleared up by T lymphocytes and macrophage, so it won't last very long, even if a bit gets into the bloodstream. So it's one of those less problematic. But with all jab of the hut type interventions, probably with all stabbings, as you call it, there's the problem of the antigen sin, and there's also the problem of long-term immunity, natural immunity, as we call it. So that's I'm actually glad that I got exposed, and pretty much have acquired this now. It's just basically when I do, for work-related purposes and travel, go for the Novavax, not because I want to. I'm hoping that by that stage everything's removed. A lot of countries are actually removing. Denmark has actually removed everything, all requirements, which is good. A number of other countries are partially. It's not clear how far they're going to go. Australia and New Zealand are still basically, psychotic, jab of the hut crazy, unfortunately, at this stage. So nothing's changed there. But I would rather get natural immunity from any coronavirus, because the advantage is that you don't end up with an antigen sin. It's less of a problem. A lot of people talk about, the hijacking that happens with antibodies. Yes, it varies depending on genetics and a lot of other factors. Exposure to these low-grade incidents of jabbing. But at the same time, there is this syndrome called antigen sin, which means that it becomes very hard to acquire natural immunity, which we know from other coronaviruses like the influenza since the 1962 study that was actually one of the big studies back then. I think I've shown you guys that study on another live stream. I haven't done a video yet on it or stuff like that. I maybe I should. It's just another. I've talked about it. Most people know about it. Many other commentators have talked about it. So I'm reluctant to spend time on something that's well known at this stage. So yeah, I would say that if you can avoid it, avoid everything. We're not talking about traditional. I've got no problems with traditional vaccines at all. I've shown you my vaccination schedule. I've done shitloads. A lot of tropical ones as well in more recent times, so like hepatitis A and B and a number of other things. But I've got no problems with traditional ones and ones that have gone through proper efficacy over a number of years. They've identified subgroups that may be vulnerable. I've checked my genetics because I did a 23andMe, gone through, made sure that that was fine, and had no adverse effects of whatsoever. But there's a difference between something that has come out of oncology, like the mRNA technology, the viral vector stuff and all that, and had a lot of really problematic side effects, even catastrophic health failure after 2 years. So we're not talking about stuff, and these were experimental for people that were, it was either death from cancer or take an experimental intervention. That's fine for stuff like that when it's life and death, and some could justify it for very elderly and frail people as an option. But for the rest of the population, with an experimental stuff that hasn't gone through the 5 to 7 year efficacy to assess, let alone taking all the data and actually locking it up for 75 years. What the hell's that all about? You know, I mean, that's never happened with any past, vaccines of any sort. We've gone through a proper 5 to 7 year assessment. These people are, let's say, rewriting the rule books, which is in terms of public health and safety, absolutely an abuse. So the things that have happened in the last 2 years have been completely outrageous. And I'm a person that never, I've, as you guys know, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I've vehemently criticised those people for the nonsense that they perpetuate. But this mRNA sort of junk, it may have an efficacy, it may have utility somewhere else. I've thought about, using CRISPR and actually going in and altering DNA sequences for purposes of people that have got Down syndrome and other things like that. It could have these sort of uses. We don't know yet, but it has the potential to correct genetic disorders and stuff like that. But to use it for other purposes, when it's been quite problematic in oncology's cancer usage, for those who don't know, it's beyond the pale, to say the least, beyond the pale. So, yes. Four hours until chicken. Are we doing long time restricted feeding, Richard? Is that what's happening? It really is breaking my fast and the fat meat bursting in my tongue. Heaven, sounds good. Has the TGA already made a third one part of the new definition of full poked? Your sexual innuendos, Tracy. Restrain yourself, woman. Restrain yourself. Also wanting to change the terminology to up to date opposed to fully poked, potentially opening the door. Yeah, I know. Yes, they seem to be changing the rules of, the definitions of what a vaccine is. All these definitions are constantly being changed. It's beyond ridiculous, So why would you change something unless you had a concern that people would go, that doesn't sound right, So, too mad. Too mad. The humor on this channel is eye-watering. Yeah, it's good to see people, chicken, seafood, different combinations. It's not steak only. Yes. Good to vary your intakes. There's a whole lot of different micronutrients in all these different foods. You must eat everything runny and raw, or never really were if in carnivore. Ah, yes, our dear friend Sverige. You're a slave. We just actually cooked for about 1.5 million years. Meats. So there wasn't any even civilization, let alone slavery back then. In his imagination, yes. I mean, look, there is value in terms of taurine to not overcook meat, because you do lose the taurine content, and it is really important for a lot of biological functions in the body. But, and I do consume a bit of raw meat and stuff like that, and, so I'm not against raw meat. but I am against, people going really weird and crazy and lonely. And usually when people have poor stomach acidity, raw meat does help because there is more taurine in the raw meat, which basically helps with improving stomach acidity. So, but somebody who can't stomach raw meat can always actually add a taurine supplement in those early days until things get normalized again, and then you just, medium rare meats, and you're fine. Yes. Hubby and I just came back from a 2-day away, managed to stay carnivore. That's pretty good. Yes. The only issue would have been oils and takeaway shops use. Yes, that can be a problem. Remember what we the astaxanthin refreshes the fatty acids. It's sort of my cheat when I go overseas. I take a bottle of astaxanthin with me and the low dose Jarrow vitamin E. Yeah. Anyway, we shouldn't be doing these things, but sometimes you don't know what, So if it's palm oil or stuff like that, it's probably less problematic. But refined palm oil does damage slightly some of the lipids, so it's not perfect in that regard. If it's not refined, it's less of a problem. But then it's a single use, and they don't do it, fast foods and all that. They are using refined because they don't want single use, which is the problem. When you refine things, you do damage and increase the deuterium, which is problematic for the mitochondria. So yes, that's always a problem. So don't overdo the fast food industry, even if it's coming from refined palm oil. Ah, yes, a woman after my heart. Yes. Question for Harry. It's about time. I know it's not ideal, but would farmed seafood, mussels, scallops, for example, have high levels of taurine, about equal to that of wild caught? No, but they wouldn't. But they wouldn't also have very low amounts either. So that'd be probably 20, 25, maybe 30% less, but it wouldn't be massive in that regard. So, and there are some cases where, depending on the feed that they're feeding them, so if they are actually feeding them like little fish and stuff like that, like a fish meal, then it can be as high as wild caught. So it depends. It varies. It's really hard to say because there's not enough information provided by. There are some manufacturers that do provide information, say, well, this is primary producers that say, well, this is the sort of fish meal that we've used. And with those, you can go, yep, if it's a fish meal, definitely. If it's not a fish meal, if it's, like kibble and stuff like that, probably lower. So it depends. So a lot of them do mixed, like they will actually kibble and fish meal. And so as a consequence, it's probably going to be slight reduction, but not massive. So it varies quite a bit in that regard. And I know some of the industry players down here in Tasmania, I mean, they even put astaxanthin in. So, when you get wild caught, sometimes you can actually find the stuff that's actually farmed has actually got more astaxanthin than the wild caught because they put additional stuff in the feed. Yeah, to make it, to give it that stronger pink color, the salmon, for instance. So, yeah, so it's not. It can vary quite a bit depending on the industry players and how they're actually running their own business. So it's quite interesting in that regard. I'm just lucky to be in this environment where I've got these sort of links and know certain people in a number of these industries, primary industries. So, but most of this information is in relation to countries which are similar, like Tasmania, Australia, Southern Australia in particular, New Zealand, have got a lot of similarities in that regard. But North America, Robert, I don't know enough about the farming practices. I would suspect because of the grain sort of subsidies that exist there. There's probably a bit more content of that, so there would be probably lower, but hard to say, in that regard. So yes, fish when they're younger, they do tend to produce far more taurine. So even if they're on generally grain, fish even poorly farmed, may still have more than actually even a grass-fed animal, a ruminant. So it's not going to be, it's going to vary quite a bit in the fish, but still it can be even higher than, again, as compared to, your ruminants. So well, if it doesn't actually work with, sometimes some people are just not suited for eggs and dairy. Simple as that. So, I'm a very big dairy person and consume raw milk. So, and quite a lot of eggs, but some people are just, due to the proteins, just can't handle them. Simple as that. So, or the sugars, lactose intolerance. But the lactose intolerance is also an issue of the lack of lactobacillus. When you come out of your mummy's birth canal, you get coated with lactobacillus. The problem is when you have an exposure to a lot of antibiotics through your life, and then sort of mimicking compounds like glyphosate, which is an antibiotic mimicking compound. Since you're new, I'll actually explain it to you. Monsanto has actually got a patent in the patent office of the United States and many other countries, and they've actually patented glyphosate as an antibiotic because it does have antibiotic properties. So yes, so consuming a lot of grains, especially GMO and other things that people have done for many years, will basically end up really wrecking your gut microbiome. And causing a lot of loss of specific types of bacterial strains. It's believed in countries like North America, the levels can be as high as 90%, where people have lost a lot of the important lactobacillus strains like the Retraining, the Rhamnosus, and many others, plus the very low in Bifidobacteria infantis, which both those with Retraining play a very important role in cleansing the small intestine and keeping other pathogens under control out of the small intestine. But unfortunately, up to 90% of the North American population, it is believed, either have very small amounts of these beneficial bacteria in their microbiome or none. So that means they have a lot of problems and reactivity with pathogens and stuff like that, let alone these other two strains play an important role synergistically in allowing some of the other lactobacillus types to grow and populate, which means that if you don't have enough of those, is your lactose intolerant due to the absence of, obviously the absence of the lactase enzyme because of pasteurization, but also the lack of certain bacterial strains that are very important in breaking it down the sugars, the milk sugars. So that may be more of an issue for a lot of people. Unfortunately, a lot of people have been exposed heavily to these compounds that have, let's say, put a wrecking ball through their gut microbiome for a very long time. Taurine is very important in actually resetting the gut microbiome. I've done some videos on certain issues with the gut and talking about certain types of a specific Swedish type of Retraining that actually has antipathogenic. It'll actually knock for six things like H. pylori, C. diff, and a number of others pathogenic bacteria, and actually improve the small intestine gut sort of microbiome situation. It will reduce the sort of pathogenics to very low levels. together with Bifido infantis, but that's another video that I'll be doing later on to cover some of that information in that regard. So a lot of people that have done kefir and have done basically the Retraining have found relief and actually able to tolerate these foods again. So it usually takes a number of months, unfortunately, but it does work in the end, as long as you're not bombarding your body with antibiotics mimicking compounds of any sort. Can be a problem. Lukey, good to see you, mate. Yes. I noticed you excited the ladies on the Bart show as well. Seeing taurine is most pervasive as an osmolyte. It's not only as an osmolyte, plays a big, big role. I would imagine marine life would intrinsically need it, no matter how they're raised and how high the levels, regardless. Yeah, I would. It's really important, but it does play a whole lot of other roles in terms of lipid peroxidation, because they do tend to have more omega-3s, so that it does play a lot of different roles in fish. That's why it's much more highly concentrated. It's the reason why the Japanese have a very high taurine diet compared to many other people. Again, they also consume a lot of fish raw, so yeah, so they tend to have a very high, and this is where the sort of the Japanese paradox, also with C19, the recent coronavirus, is also regarded to taurine and the vitamin D sort of rich foods, seafood that they consume, plus a number of them tend to supplement because it's, as well, but they do get a lot in the food as well. So okay. Tuning for the regular scheduled Serpanos show. Thanks, mate. I think that's a greeting in Maori. Yeah, thank you. Jonathan, mate, how are things? Deborah, always a pleasure. Yeah, it would be late for you at the moment, wouldn't it? Yes. Track with heat in and heat out and report your findings to Lame Norton, PhD. That crackpot. God. It's just ridiculous. It is really, really ridiculous. These guys, they just got no idea. They're just reductionists. It's really they can't get their head around complex systems, which is the problem. They're good at spurting out reductionist nonsense, but that's about it. They have like this is how this process works, but it's like this process works like this. You got a, let's say as an example, into the Krebs cycle within your inner mitochondrial matrix, the matrix of the mitochondria, and you basically, lipolysis and glycolysis, they're all running into basically the citric acid cycle. There is a rate limiting effect. You can't overload that and hope for the best. There's just so many enzymatic steps. You overload that. You got a Randall cycle activation, but these guys just don't get it. It's just, they don't understand that there are certain, not only enzyme, not only hormonal things, but there's also enzymatic limits, rate limiting effects, cofactors that play an important role in how fast these enzymes work. There's all these sort of factors, density of these things, and density of the electron chains in the mitochondria. There's all these sort of characters, like all those folds have got multiple, on both sides, you've got multiple electron chains. Well, as you get deuterium, you start destroying more of them and damaging them, and so you get a decline in this sort of mitochondrial efficiency. And as that decline happens, then it signals to the DNA, we need to change to a more different type glycolytic pathways inside the cell, and that's sort of shifting towards the cancer stuff. So as you can see, these people promoting this sort of nonsense without understanding, they're doing mitochondrial damage over time due to deuterium, as you guys know. So it's just bizarre, their thinking, but yes, somebody probably needs to put him in a bomb calorimeter, show him how it works. Get a big one. I'm in a heat deficit here. Oh yeah, you need a bomb calorimeter as well, Ben Parlis. Yes, lots of chatting away like mad. Guess the contracted C19 10,000 IUs. 100 milligrams you probably don't need that amount. You only need basically the chewable stuff for your throat. It's just basically really to just slow down. So if some get past the T cells at the mucosal sort of barriers and all that at least it'll retard the ability with the ionophore putting in, retard the sort of the speed that this sort of works. So some of that sort of stuff, yep, all fine in that regard. Vitamin C, don't go too high. You don't need on a carnivore much. You may use a bit more than normal but I wouldn't go crazy either. You'll end up with a lot of oxalate in the long run if you do that. Only if you've got symptoms, use it. Otherwise, don't. Then, yeah, K2 definitely, and taurine definitely, and the vitamin D and the zinc. The other stuff, NAC can help, but if you're getting enough protein, your body will produce the stuff anyway. So it's not as if you need those precursors. But anyway, if you want to go that way. Yeah. The key thing is, as you guys know, I keep this here just to remind you, I was fully exposed and negative on the rat tests. And these are high sensitivity one as well. So again, and my dear friend, she's getting better. Her lungs are starting to improve now. She realizes maybe I should have been on higher doses of both taurine and I probably would have had better outcomes. So she is feeling better now that she's on higher doses of taurine plus vitamin D. So it's sort of starting to sort out the fibrotic tissue. So she had probably an overexpression of matrix metalloproteinases. So the liver probably produced more MMPs, especially MMP9, which probably would have done more derangements to the collagen inside her lungs. And she's feeling it, in terms of a bit of shortness of breath. But yesterday when we were running, she was doing much better. She basically was running with a younger daughter, and she was fine. Struggled a bit getting up a really steep hillside, but then she was doing much better. So yeah, recovering at a good pace and all that. My heating bill has gone down since supplementing with taurine. I don't feel so cold. Exactly. There you go. I'm saving you money. I'm improving the thermic effect of your protein. You should be happy. I got C as well, despite everything, but I managed to get it. Gone within 3 days. Yes. We know what the C is. The C19 is. Woo! Woohoo! And protein metabolism then. Yeah. Added a taurine for all those things too. Yes. My mother asked about which form of magnesium to get, and I answered her, but also told her to take taurine preferentially. Exactly. Taurine will basically improve intracellular minerals. So basically, you'll actually hold on to. This is why a meat diet a carnivore diet is superior to a keto diet, because the extra taurine, as long as you don't overcook your meat, will actually force the retention of magnesium and potassium inside the cell. And that's important. That means you're not wasting. That's why I always say sun, salt, and meat. Simple, So thanks, Richard. Oops. Still hasn't come across. Just came through. For some reason, StreamYard is a bit slow today, but I don't know. It's probably having one of those little tantrums. Thanks, mate. It'll cover a few steaks. Or maybe I should spend it on some gourmet sausages. Maybe. I've still got quite a lot, because I actually bought from the farmers market last week quite a number, and I had from some others that I'd bought as well. So I've still got about 3 packs, another 2 packs in the deep fridge. So need to start eating them. And Dad's invited me today again, come over and have a great meal. So yeah, there's a consequence. I have to go over in that regard. And Tracy's following. Thanks, Tracy. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Yes. Yes, I always just say to people that I think a lot of people think that you need to supplement. You don't, I tend to use taurine more, as you guys know, for anti-fibrotic reasons. As I reversed my fibrosis in my heart to 0, now I'm still working on that. I think my lungs are probably clear by now from the initial glassing that I had a couple of years ago. So I was down the last time I scanned about 19%, or around about there, 18 or 19, can't remember now. So yeah, it is slowly removing the fibrosis that I had in my lungs. So yeah. So obviously that cancer risk has gone away. Some of the other stuff that I've been doing as well to knock off the senescent cells, and clear up the stuff. And the apoptotic effect of taurine plays a big role in clearing out all the damaged, cells. That's the other reason why I consume it, for those sort of reasons, to really clean up all the mess that I did with a lot of seed oils and refined sugars for all those years. Yes, it's taken a while, but it's all turned around now. Yes, good to see you here. Amazing, this Omicron variant. Getting around fast over here, very fast. Oh, yes, exactly. It's like it only hits the bronchial tissue, as you guys know, and it's getting around very fast. So it's not creating too many problems in that regard. But we have seen the people who have double or triple jabbed having some adverse effects, haven't we? Even 30-year-olds. Not very good when you end up dead and you think you're protected. Yes. It's this cytokine effect that we've been talking about, where you've compromised your immune system by too many Jabba the Hutts, and you've got certain genetics which predispose you to poorer immune response, or you've really not looked after yourself enough, like most people are kibble eaters and have very poor taurine and vitamin D status in a population, which makes them even more vulnerable to these cytokine effects, because as we know, vitamin D is an important regulator of macrophage, and prevents it from overexpressing, and also regulates the collagen degrading enzymes that can be overexpressed in the lungs. It can damage the lungs, keeps them under control so they don't go beyond certain physiological limits. So again, sun, salt, and meat. But unfortunately, most of the population, it's kibble, slip on slap, so I don't get any sun, and they wonder why the health has gone to hell in a handbasket. Yes, very much so, unfortunately, in the general population. Sheen, I just subscribed and come over from the Bart channel. Looking forward to the conversation. Not a problem, mate. Welcome. Yeah, exactly. I think we all were realised that, not the actual. Look at the. You look at the Inuit. You look at the Maasai and all that. They'll slaughter an animal and they sit there and just cutting shitloads of the animal flesh and just giving it and they're eating it. They're not there saying, "Oh, I'm not going to have this sort of thing. I'm going to restrict this. I'm going to have that and stuff like that." They eat the whole lot. It's a 1-to-1 nearly. So they get plenty of fat and plenty of protein in. And that's why they're robust and strong, very strong people who can go for miles in very harsh conditions. It's not accidental. These sort of extremely fasting, mimicking catabolic diets may be fine as a short-term intervention to reset things when people are really badly insulin resistant and very, that's fine. But long-term, it's just contraindicated in terms of what we know from tribal societies and our ancestral and archaeological evidence of the N15 data. It's just contraindicated. Your bones are mineralized collagen, and collagen is protein. It's basically mineralized protein. That's what your bones are. Most of your body is proteins and fats. So how people can think differently than that. Yes, you do need a bit of sugar to glycosylate proteins, and also to the glycocalyx, the pericellular matrix around within the arteries and around certain things like LDL and whatever, to basically then be able to sulfonate, stick the sulfur on, so it can actually then create that negative charge, which allows things not to be sticky in the, and flow better in the actual, and especially when you actually ground yourself, enhance that even more, that negative charge and that effect. But that's going to be on an ancestral lifestyle. It's not going to be on, this sort of nonsense of avoiding things. Where are you going to get your sufficient sulfur in a keto diet? It's just from plants. Plants have got a whole lot of other issues that create, and also can create sulfur imbalances and stuff like that, which I've talked about before, which I'm not going to get into another long conversation. But yeah, so it's just nonsense. And the keto diet has more become, sort of like a plant-based, low carb diet. It's a joke. No wonder they can't even regulate their electrolytes. Not enough taurine, which is the osmolyte, which I've talked about. Just ridiculous. That whole community's gone into nonsense, and all these like equivalent to a fasting mimicking diet. You can't live on that. It's just ridiculous. That community where it's gone with their thinking. If shitloads of fat is great, even shitloads more is even better. Beyond the pale. Always busy. Oh, keeps life interesting, Be boring if you sat on your ass all day. Like a volcanic erupting. Oh, okay. Interesting. Something I cannot relate to. I know about, but I can't relate to. Yes. Then there is the 5G controlled. Oh, you mean your screens? Too much screen time? Yes. Plus the blue light. Not very good, my dear. Not very good. But as you know, I did the video on 5G. There is no effect. We get more radiation from direct sunlight. And 5G is not a radiation issue. It is a circadian rhythm issue, like all, 5G, 4G, the electrical wiring in your home. It all has photonic energy, and it does have in those other non-native EMFs, does have in those other frequencies, which are blue light type frequencies, which are a problem with melatonin production and with your normal circadian rhythms. That's where the problem is really coming from. So we need to sort of lower that threshold as the evening moves forward, so sit around a fireplace and just chat. You don't need to be watching things, screens and stuff like that, or having too many electrical devices turned on. You'll get better sleep for it. Mixing gene therapy, yes. Yes. I know my enthusiastic family members will be lining up for the third. Yes. I know a few in my family as well that are doing the same. And I've had arguments with them, quite, let's say, intense arguments. But anyway, yeah, what can you do? What can you say? Yeah, I know, it does. Bloody hell, it does. Sick of it myself. Canada is psychotic too. Yes, go truckers. Yes, definitely. Yeah, government there's lost a plot like our government as well. Probably not as bad as the Australian government sort of. It is, well, the language is sort of not as hostile in Australia by the government, but still the mandates are still there. So in practice, it's the same thing, just because they're not being really nasty in that regard. I know you addressed the 5G issue with Bart, but any chance you could do a standalone one? So much fear mongering, especially when combined with graphene in the jabber. Yeah, well, graphene is basically a carbon-based, molecule in a sense. It doesn't react in the same way, which is, I've never really understood how people can even make a connection between the two. That's weird. The other thing, if you overcook meat or anything, you will actually create a bit of that sort of some of the carbon in the actual food will turn into a sort of a graphene-like structure. They use carbon to basically create graphene, if anybody knows this sort of stuff. So it's basically, you can do it yourself by overcooking stuff. So yeah, it's pretty much nonsense in that regard. There are a lot of tricksters out there, a lot of people that are doing certain weird things, because other people have gone and said, "Oh, look, I've tried it. I've got no effect." But there are a lot of charlatans deliberately out there trying to putting just nonsense out, which is unfortunate. But that's the reality. It's the reality of human nature. People do that for clickbaits, for notoriety, and all sorts of other things. What motivates people to do dishonest things is a lot of things: money, but also notoriety and whatever else. It's just the reality. I mean, I know, unfortunately, in countries like, Australia, North America, and other things, because we haven't had sort of this mass charlatanism in the past, there's been less, the academia has been less interested in sort of combating it. But if you go to India, there's a lot of basically yogis and gurus and all that run around doing all these sort of strange magical things and trying to actually making out that they've got the power of the gods in them and stuff like that. So it's all bullshit to try and trick and deceive people out of their money. And there is the Skeptic Society of India that goes around to villages and other parts of the country showing how all these things are done, demystifying them to people so they don't fall for the nonsense. Unfortunately, we don't have something similar in our countries, because the last time these sort of things were happening were in medieval time and much older times, like hundreds of years ago. In the more recent years, like the last 100 years, where our society is sort of gravitated to the more traditional sciences and more secular, and jettisoning a lot of these sort of things. But now they're on a comeback due to social media, due to the ability to reach anyone through social media. A lot of these sort of crackpot sort of things that we only saw in certain societies which were less literate, like India and places like that. These sort of ideas now are being repackaged by modern day crackpots and promoted on social media to such a level that more people are getting exposed. And because most people don't have a good understanding or grounding in science, they are easily misled, unfortunately. And any amount of videos that I or Bart did would never compensate for the amount of disinformation that's out there, unfortunately. It's that reality. We are in this sort of decaying of civilization, and a lot of these sort of weird and strange crackpot ideas are becoming more mainstream, unfortunately. Deborah, I know what you mean. It's just really a hard slog to deal with in this sort of environment. Basic things that people shouldn't be speculating and making all these strange, nonsensical positions on it. Unfortunately, is just happening. You can combat a bit of it, but just take a look at Bart's. It's round. He's got a debunking of flat Earth and many other stupid ideas out there, and it's like 400 and something subscribers. It's got nothing in terms of subscriber list, and you would think that people would be more interested, but it seems people are more enchanted by, maybe because we've grown up in being very much screen based nowadays, and that constant dopamine hit, and that sort of science to explain things doesn't give you the same satisfaction in terms of dopamine hit, where your little videos showing this sort of stuff, this sort of nonsense, just gives you that dopamine hit, bang bang bang, and it's way more effective. It's really hard to combat, so yeah, maybe we need a skeptic society of the world to basically pull all this apart and demonstrate how it's all done and how people are being deceived. So yeah. But unfortunately, our Western academia is just too basically airy fairy and too much basically consider themselves special, and don't want to interact with commoners, with common people. Yes, until they get swept away by a whole lot of crackpots. That's what they don't realize. But in the Skeptic Society of India, they do realize that, and that's why many scientists go out amongst the people to show them exactly how all this is done, how they're being deceived out of their money, and preventing these sort of groups from creating big followers, which potentially could destabilize society. So yeah, difficult one to deal with. I think I gave wrong dates for the Coles Group mandates. 25th plus non-jabbered have an hour-long info to log in and watch. Okay. Oh, look, there are a couple of businesses, even in Tasmania, there are a couple of businesses that actually don't have that requirement. Say it's voluntary. You want to do it, fine. But others that have gone literally just crazy and sort of reinterpreted, the Work Health and Safety Act. The Work Health and Safety Act was never intended for communicable diseases or stuff like that. That's a health issue. It was actually meant for, are there things safe in the workplace? And especially something that can be transmitted, whether you are jabbed or not, is irrelevant then, since there is equal risk by somebody being jabbed or not being jabbed in transmitting. So where's the value of let alone it's a gross violation of human rights. The state or an employer believing that they can actually enforce medical interventions on your person. It's just outrageous. That what this would be considered a gross violation by the West in the past, and now they are the first proponents of it. It's outrageous, to say the least. These people are criminals, as far as I'm concerned. I've got no respect for them, and we need to turf them out as soon as possible at the next election. And there are candidates out there that are basically standing, like the United Australia Party in Australia and many others in other parts, that are standing up for freedom and saying, I don't agree with all their other policies, but in this case, I'm going to make an exception because I would like to make, gut and kick these arseholes out who have basically been trying to take away our freedoms and teach them a valuable lesson. Yes. Look, it's just crazy. As I did that video on the Danish stuff that covered that point very easily. Now there's a whole lot of people trying to change, I go, well, the only thing you can come out of it, as even those researchers said, the only option is to go down to a monthly jab. I mean, that's just ridiculous. Bankrupt the system. 12 jabs per year. I mean, give us a break. That's just ridiculous. But after, it goes down, and there are adverse effects. We know it's actually people that are non-jabbered have less poor outcomes. That's the reality. And again, it is because of this compromising of the immune system, which we've been talking about. So, Llama, how are you? You're still sending emails to me? I've put you in a special folder to be replied when I'm free. I've got to do videos as well and other things, and I do have to reply to people with true medical concerns. Remember, there's only so many hours in the day. Sorry if I've missed it, Harry, but do you think that that horse dewormers shall be otherwise not named useful against? Yes, in terms of reducing replication, in terms of when it does get into your system, yes, it can actually reduce replication, which is useful in that. So, but if you've got a really strong immune system, your first line of defense with vitamin D and taurine, taurine basically protecting the T cells from going senescent. So it's a very protective in that regard. Also protects the thymus where the T cells get stored. So you've actually got better storage capacity. And on the other hand, you had vitamin D, producing the stem cells that produce the T cell lymphocytes. So yes, really it can be important to use that option, the horsey option. The IVA, yes, we know what we're talking about, but it'll trigger the AI. Thanks for reminding me. Yeah, very, very useful in that regard. But it's only when you basically I don't recommend it when people don't have any symptoms, because it does interfere with normal ribosome function, potentially, to a certain degree. So we don't want it interfering with the normal functioning of of your own transcription of different enzymes and stuff like that inside your cells. So only should be taken at a time when you have symptoms. But as I said, I didn't take any. Good levels of vitamin D, good levels of taurine, gave me very good levels of T lymphocytes. And my brother, he was sleeping with a lady, and pretty much had 5 negatives. Say no more. So do you need the horse stuff? Probably not. If you can basically get your vitamin D levels really high to therapeutic levels, and your you got good levels of taurine in your system, you're good to go. Ancestral diet with some sun, or supplementation if it's winter. Steady MC, how are you, mate? Sorry, it's if I've already asked, but I'm waiting for yes, Nova. If I get 2 doses, are they gone? So until the 3rd in Vic. So doubly concerned about this. I absolutely look, mate. I don't really know what the at the current situation is. They say you only need 2. Whether they'll actually state that you need a 3rd one, I'm hoping that by that time all these mandates go away and we don't have to worry about it. But I would say, yeah. Now, going into it, really, I would pump up my vitamin D and I'd get also my menaquinone. Now, if you don't want to buy menaquinone 4, which takes the calcium and puts it into the bones, there's another option of consuming brie, camembert, or gouda, which are very good sources of, and should give you enough if you're eating 100 to 150 grams per day, should give you enough menaquinone 4 to basically make sure that the extra calcium that's coming in from the vitamin D is going to be sent into the right direction. So also, as an osmolyte, taurine actually balances the electrolytes, including calcium, and reduces calcium in the brain and all that, so you're less excitatory. So it's really good in that regard. Well, if you're basically eating your meat raw, semi-raw, stuff like that, or rare, you probably should be getting enough taurine if you're young. Because you do biosynthesize some of your own from methionine and cysteine. But if you're not, if you're in an older age bracket, I don't know what age you are, mate, then it may be an option to basically in that regard. And if you're sort of darker skin, obviously vitamin D, you may be quite low. I haven't done the video yet. I've still got the kit. Now they have a band. It's actually a band. So it's a 2-band, 3-band, and 1-band, which is what they use for their levels. So it's not it doesn't give you an exact number, unfortunately. It only costs $27 from the UK. I still haven't done. I need to do the video and do it online. But anyway, but it's probably important if you don't have something like that to get yourself tested. And if you're low, then you really need to bump up the vitamin D up to 50,000 IUs for probably a month and get a menaquinone 4 supplement to get your levels up. And I would rather go into taking anything with really with really healthy, large amounts of T lymphocytes to go in there and just anything that comes in through a jabbing will be cleared out very fast, So that's the key thing. And Lukey's got probably something which is going to be amusing, and it's probably going to be related to me as always. Yes, we must take the mickey out of Harry. Oh, this one's going to be nice. I think you'll enjoy this. And I'll remove to the regular stuff. I better stick myself back in there. Yeah, thanks, Loki. It's traditional for science to create something for good only to be used for bad. Atom bombs, for example. Look, everything has a dual use. A knife. You don't even have to science. A knife can kill or can cut meat or anything else. Everything's got a dual use. I can take a bone from an animal and stick it in somebody's body and harm them. Anything has got dual use. You know, a seat, I can sit on it, or I can grab it and hit somebody over the head with it. It's really has to do with us humans, how we use the stuff. I've been cooking more meat in sous vide lately. So I'm retaining the taurine in the juices in the bag. There you go. Yeah, Richard does a lot of that. Vivid Mouse. He loves. He's become I think you probably saw a video of Michael Eads, who does sous vide type stuff, and sort of fell in love with sous vide type. Yeah, sous vide. Probably not even pronouncing it right, but you know me. I have a tongue twisting of from childhood in actually pronouncing things. So yes, my teachers put up with it because they knew that I was still quite cluey about other things. Yes, so they just knew. A bit like stuttering. People have stuttering. I have tongue twisting issues pronouncing certain things. Frankie boy did a progress photo update, and he has lost muscle, gained fat compared to last year. He's madly in love with the Randall cycle with his new diet. Last year, he was full carnivore. Okay. Yeah. Well, we know that he's lost the plot and he has no understanding of the Randall cycle. I tried to explain it to him ages ago when we were still on talking terms before he literally ratted on, you know, calling somebody else a rat when he ratted on, and it was very nasty towards Bart, who had been very kind to him in promoting him and supporting him and stuff like that. So yes. But it doesn't surprise me. Yes. He's adopted, you know, the other crackpots ideas about sugar. Yeah. Yeah, look, this is what happens with people with reductionism and, you know, very easily fall into crackpot ideas. They just don't understand the complexity of the human body and how it works, and they can very easily get swayed by trends and opinions and stuff like that that sound plausible. That tells you something, that the person can't really engage this well enough to basically realize between what is bullshit and what isn't. So yes, yeah, Randall cycle plus getting older is catching up to him. Yeah, well, as you engage the Randall cycle more with inappropriate foods, and he's probably been doing it for years as well when he was younger, before and all that, you do lower your mitochondrial density. So the Randall cycle activation can actually happen at a lower threshold. If you've basically, you know, have very high mitochondrial density as a young child with high mitochondrial density, you could probably tolerate a higher threshold. That means before you hit that maximum threshold inability to oxidize fats and sugars, you can, and with more physical activity that young people do, you tend to basically be able to tolerate. But as your mitochondrial density lowers from the deuterium damage in your, what happens is that gradient, actually you'll hit that threshold much earlier in terms of energy influx into your system coming in. So, you know, eventually mitochondrial damage does catch up. If you want to be healthy long term and have good mitochondrial energy levels, so to speak, because that's what it is. Mitochondrial density and the health of your mitochondria will determine your energy levels going forward as you age. If you want to have that, you need to be more like the camel that doesn't show its age and is a deuterium depleting machine. has very low deuterium sources of energy, which basically is animal fats. And the water content there is also highly deteriorated. The only thing we can have is something like, alpine water, which is due to the fractionation, due to the elevation, you get different fractionation in terms of UV, knocking out neutrons out of the water molecules and altering their and making them what we call into more lighter water. Light water has less deuterium. So as a consequence of those physical effects, that sort of water is sort of more tolerable. It's not as bad for us as long as we don't consume a lot. I use a bit of it, for this purpose. I'll buy some, and the alpine water, the Evian, stuff like that. But yeah, when it comes to Randall cycle, it really has to do, it's not only the types combination, but it is the gradient, and that gradient gets affected by two factors: the influx volume, how much is coming into the body in terms of those mixed energy sources, and also how much, because both lipolysis and glycolysis are going straight into the Krebs cycle. There's a rate limiting effect, and then there's the other side of things, which has to do is what's your mitochondrial density? How much influx can you take to use? So it's all that sort of stuff. It's a combination, but unfortunately, a lot of people don't realize that. Is palm kernel oil different to normal palm oil? Is one better than the other? Palm kernel oil has lower PUFA, so is slightly better, but more expensive in that regard. So, and if it's extra virgin cold pressed, it's much better. If it's refined, can be problematic, especially if it's coming from the plant, not the kernel. The plant will actually have more slightly higher slightly higher deuterium levels and slightly higher PUFA levels. As a consequence, more prone to some going through an oil refinery that is refining the oil to make it more stable. You're going to get a bit more damaged in terms of the oxidative primary and secondary products, plus aldehydes are going to be slightly higher. Not as high as the other vegetable oils, the seed oils that we talk about in the West that are primarily very popular, but where it's still not as good as, something which is unrefined. But unrefined, you can only have like single use, like they used to do in the old days, like even, putting it into like a wok type thing, and you throw a bit in and then you cook it, and you're actually lifting it and moving it around, which means that it doesn't burn and it's not basically as damaging in that regard, and it's a single use. So that sort of thing is less of a problem. A few tablespoons I used to put in and just cook it with the heat sort of thing to give it flavor and stuff like that. But when you deep fry and stuff like that, and you use those oils over and over again, these refined oils, they can be a problem. So it's no different, but not to the rate that our seed oils are. That's the difference, but still problematic, to say the least. It's hard to tell what seafood is wild caught and farmed these days. That is true. That is true. At least we're in Canada. It's irritating that companies aren't more transparent about their practices. Yep. Well, it's not. At the end of the day, governments need to basically regulate these sort of things and demand that they are. Companies aren't going to do it voluntarily. It's the reality of the beast, so to speak. Why would anybody do anything if it affects their bottom line in terms of profits? It's not going to happen. So that's the unfortunate reality that we're living in. Anyway, it's been led to an explosion of jelly. Yeah, that is true. Yes. That's, if you go back Remember when the dinosaurs were taken out, all the dinosaurs were lost, and we had very little dinosaurs around? What happened was we saw an explosion of the mega beast. We saw the mammals conquering the planet and all these massive mammals emerging, megafauna as they were called. They declined as the numbers grew, and you got more competition for the same level of, energy on the planet that can be utilized by mammals. So as more mammals bred and bred and bred, they became smaller. Even we, as our energy supply, the fat of the animals actually declined, and we moved into interglacial period about between 20 odd thousand to 8,000 years, when agriculture sort of started beginning. This sort of period, we saw a decline in our height, a decline in our size, and a decline in our brains by 10%. That wasn't accidental. Less intake of nutrients and all that. There are people on islands that are basically very small that can actually emerge when the amount of effective nutrients and energy that's in that environment actually shrinks or is very limited. So these things can have a limiting effect. Or they can have, when there's not much competition around, an explosive effect. And as we're taking a lot of fish, overfishing and stuff like that, what's actually happened is there's a lot of room for new critters to basically fill in that void. And that's why we're seeing an explosion. It's basically evolution in motion. You reduce competition. Fish that eat jellyfish and stuff like that's what's going to happen. The numbers are going to explode. That's what's pretty much happened. It's a repetition of something that happened a very long time ago with megafauna on the planet after the asteroid hit and took out the dinosaurs, or most of them. So yes, that's what's happening due to our overfishing, unfortunately. Not in everywhere, but I know off the Japanese coast there are massive, as big as like vehicles, even bigger. I think they found one that was nearly as big as a truck or something like that. It was ridiculous. Yes, megafauna in the oceans. Not a problem, mate. Let me try and pick up some speed. Xenoestrogens, depends on the product. That's been my concern, is a reason why I don't use sous vide approach. I'm concerned about those sort of things as well. But there is really quality stuff, and there is like the lining is similar to baking paper and stuff like that, are very different types. So if it's a good quality, there's less of an issue in this regard. It depends on the quality of the material used. I tend to do it because I can't see the value. It's too much piss farting around. And it's not the way our ancestors, but some people like it. So, as long as they limit it to occasionally, it's probably not going to be a big issue. And if they're getting enough choline in to methylate away the xenoestrogens, probably going to be less of an issue for those people. Eat some extra eggs to get the choline. Oh, there's a reason of concern to have. Bruce Wayne, do I use a specialized reusable bag made of silicone for mine? Yep. Yeah, that's the type that I'm just going to, the silicone one, safer. And I think Richard Vivid Mouse actually uses the silicone ones as well. So, but some people use the more cheaper ones, and that can be a bit of a problem in terms of xenoestrogens and stuff like that. So yeah, but yeah, they're cheaper, and most people do use them, unfortunately. No, I don't basically do all that sort of stuff, or strip off. Well, actually, on my Zoom things, I do come very lightly dressed. You'll probably end up turning up. I'll have to stop doing that, just in case. I used it making Yogurt? Really? Okay. How do you do that? In a sous vide? Yogurt? Never heard of it. You can? Oh, God. There you go, Richard. You can make yogurt, apparently. Often use ghee. Okay. Yeah, ghee's I get it's from New South Wales. I'm trying to remember the brand now. What's the brand name? I cannot remember. It's from Byron Bay. If anybody can remember, there's a Byron Bay brand of ghee that usually comes in a container which is about 300 and 500 grams, something like that along those lines. If anybody can remember the brand, it's quite nice. It's got a really nice flavor to it. A rich flavor because it's all grass-fed and grass-finished type sauces. But I'm trying to remember the brand. If it comes to me, if anybody else does remember, because I did show it a couple of times in the past. Russell? I don't believe in carb cycling. That's just ridiculous. It's just basically an excuse to engage the Randall cycle. There's no need for it. It's just a sort of a modern preoccupation. Even tribal societies in the modern era only have seasonal, and that's to fatten up. That's the whole purpose of combining sugar and fat together, is to basically engage the Randall cycle and fatten up. That's the purpose of it. It's useful if you're in an environment where animals have become leaner, like they have in the last 20,000 years. But prior to that, they were much fatter, and we relied on that fat source directly, and we had sort of frost right down to the tropics at the time. But now that's not the case. We're in an interglacial period, much warmer period. So we do have seasonal starch and fruit, and tribal people do use it to engage. Not the Maasai, not the Inuit, but the Hadza usually use seasonal starch because they tend to basically have very little capacity to have enough energy in their environment. So the animals are slightly leaner, so they tend to basically be very lean through for parts of the year, and then towards the end of the season, when the fruit's around and the tubers around, they will cook that stuff and combine it with the fattier animals and engage the Randall cycle and fatten up for those other leaner months. And they cycle. You can actually see them, even the sand people, the Bushmen of the Kalahari, the same thing. You can actually look at their photos that are taken in different seasons, and they've either got absolute very little body fat on them, and other times they've got a bit of pungent, a bit of fat there, because that's the whole purpose. Fat is basically a storage or form of energy. That's what it's useful for. We just have too much because we constantly engage the Randall cycle by combining carbs and fats in large amounts, and in particular winter when you shouldn't be at all. Summer, when it's available seasonally, we also have the ability to because of the deuterium thing, levels that are much higher in sugar that can damage your mitochondria and reduce your energy capacity as you become older. You don't want that sort of stuff at all in your diet, Russell. Not one iota. So fat usually tends to be the mark in terms of parts per million is about 130. So all sugars are around 140 to 160, depending on the sugar type. The more refined, the more there is. And when you're looking at animal fats, they're basically between olive oil is 130, smack on the limit. And things like tallow and all that are about the 120 mark. And butter and all that. Lard, pig's fat, and bacon are much lower, 115 to even lower than that. Like bacon on its own, that means with the protein added and everything, it's about 113, where the normal lard is 115. So go figure. It just may be the part of that body that where the bacon comes from is much lower in general deuterium for whatever reason. Something to do with the physiology of the way it stores that those areas of the body. But fish, slightly even lower, but the problem is DHA may be very low, like 102 parts per million, but you can't oxidize it and use it for energy. So it's a moot point. It's more of a structural material. But yeah, it's really interesting. The sort of, and I don't subscribe to carb cycling. I just think it's people that are basically ignorant of the biochemistry and don't understand a number of things and think that you need it. You don't. Your body can produce enough glucose for its red blood cells, for its brain, and a number of your organs that may need a small amount of glycosylation. That means what I talked about earlier about the pericellular matrix and other parts of tissue that need some level of glycosylation of those proteins, small amounts. And the glycocalyx, which is on the surface, the little hairline structures, which is on the surface of the actual cells that need some level of glycosylation. The body can do all that. Even the small amount of fructose that you require, exceptionally small, the body can use glucose, so it can actually turn the backbone of the glycerol, the backbone of the actual fat, and certain gluconeogenic amino acids like alanine into basically glucose, and then convert some of that into fructose, a small amount that the body requires. So no requirement. Even the USDA recognizes there is zero physiological requirement. You got Maasai, you got other populations that don't consume any sort of carbs of any significant level, like a lot of Westerners, and you've got other tribal populations like the Sand people, the Kalahari, they consume practically zero. They even the nuts that they consume as a treat is basically like our macadamia nuts don't have any carbohydrates in them, so they basically live in an arid environment. It's nothing to plant, nothing to grow. They get a bit of deuterium depleted water from leaves, which they put into a little ostrich sort of egg container. Very different in that regard. So there is no real reason for it. It's just basically we've been addicted for the last couple of thousand years, and we still can't get our mindset around that, the non-requirement, and that if we provide ourselves with enough protein and fat, we'll have the energy and we'll have the structural material to basically have good functioning bodies. So, but unfortunately, the propaganda is strong out there, and I vehemently disagree with these people that think that carb cycling is a good idea. It's not. And their thyroid nonsense is absolutely nonsense, because even when you actually go into a more lower grade, your TSH comes down as well. Normal, it's not as if it goes up and the other ones go down. That can be pathology, but it doesn't. It just comes down. And most centenarians are actually running in that lower grade anyway. So they just naturally, because of their genetics, they have high clearance. And so they can actually run it at this lower grade. Not very low, because that's too catabolic, but in this lower grade compared to somebody eating carbs. And that is actually a sign of longevity. Higher carbohydrates, this so-called high metabolism nonsense, basically it means that you're actually cell dividing much faster. Not a good thing if you want a long life. Definitely not a good thing. Higher cell division. So it's nonsense pretty much in that regard. If you want to remain youthful for longer, keep away from the carbs. Listen to the camels, the deuterium depleting machines. They got a very low deuterium diet based on fat, and you can't tell the difference between how old they are. Very hard because of low deuterium. They maintain very high mitochondrial health right through until cell division stops, and they are snuffed out at that point. That's the difference. We do a lot of mitochondrial damage because of high carbohydrates, and our mitochondria decline. That's why we can engage the Randall cycle and become diabetic or whatever at a much lower gradient. Sometimes we find it very hard unless we go to zero carbs to actually to be able to lose anything or work or feel proper again. So, nah, it's nonsense. Look, he's got another one for me. God, he's pumping them out today. He's definitely pumping them out today. And very appropriate, this one. Oh, yes, mate. Oh, yes. And it looks like Llama himself. He'll get a kick out of this one as well. I hope he does. If he doesn't, I'll get a laugh out of it anyway, even just thinking of him. And yes, he is a deuterium depleting machine, isn't he? Thanks, Loki. Perfect. It's the new model, the new Camel Model T. Better save that. I'm gonna definitely have that. I'm gonna get a lot of laughs out of that, mate. Thanks. Ah, is the sound back now? I thought I actually reset that so it wouldn't do that. That's annoying. Is the sound back now, Loki? All good? Ah, good, good. That is annoying. It's done it again. Bloody hell. I'll have to check the settings again. I'll have to run a private thing and see whether I can work out why it's resetting. It's annoying. Nash, did you see the COVID breath test supposedly coming out? Yeah, I did. More nonsense. It's madness. It's just everybody's jumping on these bandwagons, and you got all these woke idiots running around, a flu-like effect. I mean, I showed you that study between the flu versus the COVID, the levels. Actually dying from, not with, in ICUs and stuff like that, the real numbers, and they don't stack up. This is in the UK. It's just bloody nonsense, and people are just gone crazy. And obviously, there's always charlatans out there, and always people that want to profiteer at the ignorance of people, and that's what's happening, unfortunately. Ridiculous. Do I? Yes. Here to help. Poor Joe McCullough is well-meaning and being targeted by big hackers, getting banned left, right, and centre. He's now wrong about everything. Great info on biohacking, lifestyle, and stuff. Oh, look, I don't. I do have some little niggling disagreements with Joe on some little points here and there, but generally speaking, his heart's in the right place. His message is on point on many issues, and I think that he's really getting a bad rap. He's being discriminated pretty much because he's talking the truth about this sort of nonsense, and unfortunately, all these big tech companies, pharma and tech companies that are in lining each other's pockets are really nasty. Okay, Julia Bishop's husband making a fortune profits on the rats. Okay, yes, I smell a rat. Yes, very much. I do. Yes, one of those rats. One of Richard's relatives. Distant rat relative. Thank you. Oh, that was the love heart after the. On the exchange rate, she did better. I had to rob that in. Thank you for appreciating me. Appreciate it. HDE. What is a good dose of for dogs for taurine? I have no idea what their requirements are, or for cats. I haven't looked into it. I just sort of encourage people to give them raw meats, both cats and dogs, and if it's fresh raw meat, it should have enough. If you were to throw in a gram or half a gram, um, would be probably wouldn't be an issue. Let's just, what's the weight of a dog? The average dog. Average dog weight. Okay. Oh, God. It varies that amount, does it? Bloody hell. So we're looking at about probably 60 pounds for a male. 45, 50. So probably 55 would be the average. So maybe around about 18 kilos or whatever, around about that amount. You're talking about probably easy 1 gram. You're probably safe with 1 gram in that regard. It'd be equivalent to 4 or 5 grams for, or 4 to 6 grams, depending on the human, sort of comparison to the dog, because, I'm talking about a 70 kilo, 154 pound human, and then dogs can vary quite a bit in weight, from, a bit over 10 kilos right up to, 25, 30 kilos in some regards. So it's, that's a hard one. So I would say you probably at 1 gram, you're probably adding it to their meal, probably safe, not a problem, so, but I don't know enough about animal physiology. I haven't looked into animal physiology, so I don't know enough to basically give you really good advice. There's probably some books out there that probably somebody's written a book about the sort of exact nutrient requirements per kilo of body weight for the actual animal, and I'd probably try and find something like that. Maybe there's something on Amazon or one of the other sort of bookstores online where they've got it specific and talk about all the nutrients. There are studies, animal studies, that a veterinary scientists have actually done, that actually go through different animals and look at the sort of the amounts that certain nutrients are required. And in that way, you can find out exactly per kilo or of body weight how much of a specific nutrient, and that'd be probably your best guess. I mean, it's not my specialty to be so, but at 1 gram, you're probably safe for most dogs. Medium sized, more or less. But yeah. Do you think this cytokine effect happened, if not sooner than anticipated? Possibly. Hard to say. Look, genetics are very different between people. Susceptibilities are very different. How compromised, immunocompromised somebody is, that plays a role as well. If you've got a strong immune system, you can clear out a lot of this sort of stuff. Let's say you do a 3-day fast, rebuild your immune system, and pack in the vitamin D and taurine, and you get your T lymphocytes really high, they can go inside your cells and clear out those cells. And also the high vitamin D and taurine will have an apoptotic effect. So if cells are deranged and very damaged, by a lot of this sort of foreign particles, they'll be knocked out and cleared out of the system. So it really depends on all these factors. You guys are more cluey about this sort of stuff. The average Joe Blow out there isn't. They got no idea. They're still eating kibble, crap, and stuff like that, and have very poor vitamin D status and very poor, animal nutrition status. What I call, they have an animal deficiency in their diet. And so that can be a bit of a problem. Poking jokes, chips. Does that come with sauce as well? Sorry to ask. That's okay. No, not a problem. But I'm waiting for. Yeah, we all are. If I get two, so they're gonna say I'm unvaxxed. Yeah, until 3 doses in VIX. So doubly concerned about this. I don't know what the current policy is in Victoria. But if you're technically, if you've taken it, or employees are saying as long as you've taken one or you're booked in for one, you're fine. And then you just have to do the remainder in that regard. But they want you to basically, because the other one, the booster, is actually just done for those people who've done two, but have done them last year. And now with the new variant, which is the Omicron, they want you to do another one to give yourself a bit of a boost in terms of your antibodies. That's the whole thinking behind it, which is nonsense. But anyway, that's the thinking. But if you're just doing the first, then they're only going to be requiring two. Whether that policy changes later on, they say you need a third one towards the end of the year. Don't know at this stage, because they seem to be changing the rules continuously. And we don't know how the international developments are going to affect Australian policy either, and the political sort of development with a campaign, with elections coming. So there's a lot of question marks on how it's going to be all playing out this year. So it's going to be interesting, to say the least. I'll put at the end of this live stream, I'll actually put in, and I'll pin it in the comments area, and I'll actually put in the website where you can actually go and check to see what's available, because that's the government one where they actually show you put your they'll actually bring up all the options, what's available. So once that actually goes through the actual ticking off and being put on the website, then you can actually click on the specific. You'll be able to click on Novavax. You'll be able to put your postcode, and then you'll be able to do a search, and it'll take you directly to where you can go and get it in your locality, as an example. So you just have to check that website and see when they've updated it. So when they've updated it, then you can actually do a search and find out where you can get it in that regard. So that's what I'm doing, like on a week, on the daily basis. I check. I think next week they should actually have added the sort of the Novavax on, which means that then people can start booking depending on which place, who are the providers, so they can vary in that regard depending on which one you've selected. So that's all I know at this stage. So I hope that helps. Better tracking. You're being better tracked. G'day, Robbie. How are you, mate? Raymond, good to see you, mate. Oops. Mark McLeod, you mean the clown in Western Australia, is going for the SS Top Bloke Award. Yes, he is. Absolutely. Nicola, but yes, rear end. Yeah, God, he sounds like Goebbels every day. That guy's lost the plot completely. Completely and utterly. I always get bloated after I eat, and it's annoying. Could be your gut microbiome. Could be an issue. So you've still not really restored proper bacterial stuff. You'll be looking forward to my gut restoration video, hopefully towards the end of the week. We'll see how that goes. I recently had a new walkway poured in front of my place and sunk in a 1 centimeter diameter, 20 centimeter long copper rod in for grounding with just feeling a lot better. That's using the wall plug. Okay, yeah, good. Sounds good. Look, I do recommend to a lot of people if they can ground. It's a really good thing. The more you ground, the better. It's the ultimate antioxidant. Really the ultimate natural antioxidant. If you want to stabilize tissue that's lost its electrons and stabilized, yes. Saw Garland Farm vitamin B12 video today and said every synthetic bitter isn't vegan, needs contain poultry manure. Those poor vegans. Oh, look, I don't really know enough about the vegan B12, but yeah, wouldn't surprise me. I mean, look, their whole diet is a misanthropic diet, and their whole sort of notion that they don't do any harm is just bullshit. More animals are killed in grain agriculture than in basically, carnivore. So it's just ridiculous. Yes, most of them are. There are very few brands that are of any quality. Most of them are pretty problematic. Best thing is just to get it from real food. There's plenty of it in animal foods. No need to supplement, especially for us anyway. Yep. I don't think it surprised anyone, Bruce, and not one iota. Yeah, look, I've sent a whole lot of emails and I've gone in on their into Twitter, both to the Prime Minister and Greg Hunt, and a number of other politicians around both the premiers and all that. I've just stuck stuff and information and whatever and criticised them and said, well, you're not looking at the real data, and told them about the different death rates and stuff like that from the actual issue, and about the efficacy of a whole lot of things. They pretty much ignore a lot of this sort of stuff. Unfortunately, that's the real. But you know what? I'm actually getting a lot of replies back from people, and that's good. But the funny thing is, on the Greg Hunt, I've had not one. On the Prime Minister's Twitter account, I've had a couple. On the Greg Hunt's one, they're all fanatics or jabber fanatics, but they just ignored me completely. And all this data, you go, do none of you engage your mind at all? Are you so brainwashed? Yeah, but sort of hard. They basically are, a bit like that. So, hope I pronounced your Indian name properly. Do apologize if I haven't. Bruce Lee. Yes. Yes, it is. It is supposed to be. But I covered that in the earlier one. So, we're just being pretty much ignored. But I will put the link and people will be able to search and find where it's going to be available in their neck of the woods. So You just have to go and check that website every day, unfortunately. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, fermentation and bacteria. Yep, exactly. B vitamins. Well, B vitamins actually, a lot of the beneficial bacteria exchange a lot of B vitamins themselves. So yes, yes, it is. Yes, it is. 21st apparently, but still, yeah. As I said, if you don't need to take it, don't bother. Just keep your T lymphocytes really good. But if you're, your back's against a wall and you've got no option in terms of employment, travel, and other things like that, it's an option. I'm just glad I got actually exposed and basically no issues whatsoever. And, I did have very stomach mild symptoms. I know immediately when I get something, it hits me because of the norovirus genetics that I've got. I'm homozygous, so it affects me immediately. And I know when I've got a virus in my system, I go, hmm. And that was basically pretty much the next day that I had certain types inkling. And then on the Monday, which is 2 days after I'd been exposed, I had a bit of another inkling that that something wasn't. It was Tuesday actually when I actually had the diarrhea attack. It takes a couple of days, but I know immediately when I've got a virus in my system, it hits me because I'm sensitive because of my genetics. It's sort of something that I don't like. It annoys me, but you know what? Now I realise it's an early warning system. So in older age, I've come to accept it. It is part of my genetics that I'm a bit more vulnerable in that regard. Ah, yes, yes. Nice one, Lukey. Let me just disengage that and share this one. God has been pumping them out like mad today, old Lukey. And there it is. Yes, let the taurine flow through you. Yes, let the taurine flow through you. Zzz. Ah, nice one, Lukey. Nice one. Nice. Yes, it will make you a superhero, the old taurine. But hopefully not demented and crazy. Looking for world power. Uh, yes. 27th. Sorry, 21st. 21st. That's what the minister said. 21st, it'll be available in Australia. So I'm hoping next week that it'll be on their website and they'll be making the deliveries next week to the different pharmacies around the country and different Jabba the Hutt centres around the country. So, yes, along those lines. You're welcome. Harut, good to see you, mate. How are things in Eastern Europe on the front line, mate? On the front line. Yes, I don't think there's going to be, I mean, the Russians, the last time they walked into Crimea, they walked into Kazakhstan, they told nobody. So they just basically are saber rattling. I don't think, well, there is always the military option on the table, but I don't think they're going to literally go in. I think it's more saber rattling, a bit like the Cuban Missile Crisis. And the Americans need to realize it is a bit like the missile crisis. For them, it's an existential threat, like the missile crisis was for them. So, if they push too hard, maybe they will precipitate the incident that at the moment is just saber rattling. Yes. But keep your head down. Use a helmet. Is that Harry Serpanos in the distance? Hmm. I'm supposed to be doing the comedy, Charles. You know, God almighty. G'day, Charles. Good to see you, mate. Do you have any knowledge regarding mold toxicity? Yeah, yes, yes. There's plants that actually, I was going to make a video on plants. There are certain plants that actually can reduce mold in the environment. Obviously, methylating away stuff like that is really good, and also your detox pathways. So your two favorite things are taurine and choline for dealing with that sort of stuff. Also, a bit more, in terms of selenium, which is a bit more eggs and stuff like that. In that regard, can really help. But also in strengthening your immune system. So the taurine and the vitamin D, it helps as well. But really, you've got to get out of an environment like that and basically reduce the effect on your body. So it's not enough. There are things, other things that can help as well. Find out the source and clear it up. Get somebody professionally in to clear it up, and try to minimize your exposure as much as possible. Ventilation is really important as well to reduce it. Sometimes certain areas are not well ventilated, so you may have to modify things. So it's all important. Then treating the site, which is with sort of anti-fouling type stuff. So there's a lot of things. It's not only you, all that. There are a number of ferns. Now, you have to be very careful with ferns because some ferns can be hazardous to animals, but there are some ferns that actually can have anti-mold type activities, can reduce the mold in the indoor environment. So there's a number. I've been meaning to do a video on the different plants and that can be used in a home and in an office space, stuff like that, because sometimes you're in an office environment, it can be a problem. But I do have later, probably in Australian Southern Hemisphere spring, sort of probably April, May, that I'm looking at doing something particular on mold at that stage. So I'll get into much more detail in that regard. And I'll probably go down a few more rabbit holes and see whether there are any other options as well in that regard. Yes, old salad boy. Yes, definitely is. Also, you heard of dynamic neutral retaining system? No, I haven't. It is supposed to retain overzealous limbic system and goes into fight or flight too easy. Okay. I have not heard of the dynamic neural retraining system. No. So is there a specific practitioners that do it? No, I haven't actually. I'll look into it. Interesting. Now but taurine is really good for that as well because it does increase GABA and does help you, calms you down. That's why carnivore diet is much more calming, especially if you don't overcook your meat and lose a lot of the taurine in the meat. So it can be useful. I better save off the Roy factor with his taurine flow. Yes, that Roy character with his, flow of taurine, the dark side taurine, the animal in you. Anyway, that fellow, he'll be tonight. Yes. In about 5.5 hours from now. Yes. He's an interesting fellow. He's my sort of twin incarnation, nightly incarnation. Yeah, yeah, it does. It helps as well. I've heard. There's a number of things that can be used, traditional stuff that can be used for detoxing and stuff like that. But don't go crazy on some of this sort of stuff, because can have a negative effect as well, too much. Gary, good to see you, mate. How are things in that wonderful state that you're in? How's your lovely premier? Yes. Yeah, and you haven't done anything to sort of help feed the wildlife, like the crocodiles in your region? Yes. Anyway, heading off with youngest daughter to catch dinner. Sounds pretty good. Hopefully barramundi sounds even better. No, I actually like barramundi as well. No, it is nice. Yummy. Taurine, salt, sunshine, back to nature for mental health too. Yeah, I know this year's been a bloody crazy year. Even last year, 2 years. God, just hoping that this year isn't as bad, that it starts unwinding back to normality. We can only hope. Take care, mate. It's good to hear from you. And thanks for dropping in occasionally on those Zoom sessions. It's been good to have you there. And interesting what's been happening in your neck of the woods as well. But yes, enjoy your dinner hunting with your young daughter. You need a post noted reminder that we can't hear you. Yeah, I know. It's unfortunate. Things happened. Patience is a virtue, Tracy. And so is... You guys complain that I talk too much. There you go. I give you a little break in between, and even then you complain. I can never satisfy. I can never keep you guys happy. Bad parlors. Everything is a weapon. Ah, yes, exactly. Us humans, exactly. Even hands. Precisely. We are definitely obligate hypercarnivores. Based on the N15 data, the last 8,000 years, we lost the plot big time, unfortunately. What about 72 fasting protocol? Be this? Yeah. Look, I do occasionally. It's a good reset for your immune system. So, yep, I do HD. Retraining with Physatin and fermented dairy. Retraining, I'm not doing it currently, but I did it for about 6 months. And that helped quite a bit. And then Physatin, I do it as I do it, 3 months on, 3 months off, and all that. I've just shifted it, doing it not 5 days, but 3 days, and just taking, a higher dose. So rather than 5 days, I do it 3 days, and I basically take 1,000 rather than 500. So it's what I do. Now, some people have had, like Paul, had a few. Oh, I don't feel that but he said it's not too bad. He just felt a bit, so. And it is important that Physatin is taken with a lot of cream. It is fat soluble, so it requires a lot of cream to absorb. Fermented dairy, I'm into fermented dairy. Like I have times when I do basically kefir, and then I sort of drop off. I'm not constantly doing it. It's an on-off thing that I do. Stearic acid can be good for reverse electron transport and biogenesis of new mitochondria. So has its benefit, but I wouldn't go crazy. There's a rate limiting how much, so you don't want to go really too crazy in that regard. So small amounts are fine. I think most of us, on a carnivore diet, get more than enough from the fat of an animal. So But if people want to basically, they're in an older age bracket where they've sustained a lot of mitochondrial damage, yeah, under those circumstances, probably a good idea to, sort of force this the cells to produce, to clone, because that's what actually happens, cloning. But at the same time as you're cloning, you're still cloning. If there's a poor mitochondria, you're cloning a poor mitochondria. It's not as actually, it's like brand new from stem cells. So you don't get the same value for what you're doing for that reverse electron transport. So it's not as, you could say, good in that regard. Yep. Cerul's fine. And taurine and leucine are fine. I occasionally do some dirty fasts or where I'll throw in leucine as a reason, so, but I stick to about not massive amounts either. Nowadays I just do about 3 grams. Neff, good to see you, mate. Coincidentally, I just sent a flat earther who wrote a book on it over the March channel about an hour ago. Good for you. I can't shake him up with arguments and nullified his claims, so I had to give up. Fair enough. Look, yeah, probably pushing shit up here if you think you can actually change people like that. They are so rigid in their thinking. Some people that, yeah, you got Buckley's chance. But Bart will have a bit of fun pulling this person apart and his nonsense. So, yep, good idea. He enjoys that sort of stuff. I need a nap. Fair enough. Not a problem, mate. Thanks for your time, Harry. Take care, good people. Don't forget the Euro live stream later. Thank you very much. And that's in about slightly over 5 hours from now, 5 hours and 18 minutes. My impression is that we're clinging to it because we're competing model managers to be around enough. It's confirmation bias on steroids. Yep, look, there is a lot of confirmation bias by a lot of people. People don't go down rabbit holes, don't go down to try and understand why things are the way they are or not. Most people just basically detect things at a surface level and either accept it or don't. It's just the way a lot of people are. And that's why there's a lot of nonsense out there, especially with social media now, the way information gets around very fast. And some of the most biggest nonsense is the most clickbaitable. Unfortunately, it's the reality. So, yes, can be wrong. Yes, throwing them through themselves out questions at the rest. Yes, exactly. Occam's razor ought to be enough to get them out, but it isn't because unicorns and stuff. Yeah, look, as I said, fanatics, when it comes to Occam's razor, they just ignore a lot of this sort of stuff. So what do you do? It's just, yeah, look, modern social media is really a double-edged sword like everything. Some people, I would say the majority of people tend to gravitate to sort of things that give them dopamine enjoyments, dopamine hits, and as a consequence, they're more susceptible to these things. Yeah, probably one way of describing it. Evie Sorella, Subi is my cinder grill. Okay, everybody's got their little. I know a lot of people use the silicon type reusable stuff, which doesn't have any of the plastic xenoestrogen type issues. And I suspect you're probably doing the same because I notice everybody seems to be doing the same as well. Yes, it's perfect for yogurt. I put in a glass jar and it keeps for temperature constant to multiply bacteria and not potentially kill them, to prevent them from growing from too low a temperature. Okay, interesting. I've never looked. I'll take a look. Actually, you've actually made me interested. So, hypocritically speaking, if a person was exposed to the lurgy, how many days could a person expect to be symptomatic if they are likely to? Hard to say. It varies so much between people. It has to do not only with genetics, but what their diet is like, what their genetics are like, what their exposure level was, how strong their immune system is or not. There's so much variability, but it's usually a couple of days that they usually are, or it can be protracted if they've got very poor immune system. So it can be a couple of weeks, or even linger on with long COVID type symptoms. Yeah, so it varies quite a bit, but not for this boy who's got super T cells. I'm bragging, My brother even brags more because he slept with a woman that actually had active C19 and is just now recovering, taking our advice with taurine and minoquinone 4 and a few other things to basically get her lungs back to normal. So I think she sort of learnt her lesson. Not to, strong immune system is really important to be asymptomatic and just cruise by, like this boy did. Still bragging, I know. I have to just rub it into everyone. I'm a C19 survivor. Yes. I just noticed. I'll stop singing. Just a couple of people dropped off. Oh, Harry's singing. Oh, shit. Oh, yes. More on the thing. So, cruising fast, cruising through. Have to do this to try and catch up. You know me. I saw 4 so far behind. Used car salesman, road camels. Hey, don't knock them, Mr. Kurz. They got a good hump, don't they, Neff? Yeah, I know. Oh, well, knocks out the audio. I have to work out what basically how to sort it. I'm not sure yet. So, yeah. Andy Joyo, Ben Parlis. Joe, good to see you here, mate. He's enjoying his little guitar. Do you have any information on the use of monoclonal antibodies in Crohn's disease? My close friend is suffering badly. Pretty much get him on a taurine supplement in that regard, and vitamin D. He needs to get up to therapeutic levels like you did. It's not going to, there's another video that will be out this week that talks about another mineral that's important. So I'm not going to say too much because I don't want to, I do want people to watch it. So yeah, that can help as well. But really, you've got to get your vitamin D levels up. You've got to basically turn those genes off that have been activated. And you've got to basically get your taurine levels up to deal with the problem of sorting out the gut function. So, yeah. So that's really important. And unfortunately, it really means a species-appropriate diet. If you had a species-appropriate diet from birth with the sun on your back, you don't have these problems. People are so far away from, earthing, also very important, the tribal people do. Massive detoxing. Unfortunately, I know that because you mentioned about this friend of yours before, he's sort of very hard to get him on a carnivore diet and stuff like that. So at most, supplemental taurine and vitamin D are your only options at this stage until he sort of has a different mindset and willing to shift in that regard. Ah, yes. So her husband is a big rat in the industry, is he? Okay. Good to know. It doesn't surprise me. It does not surprise me. These people are coming out of the woodwork selling their wares via their political mates. Yeah, doesn't surprise me whatsoever, Tracy. Sean Baker has a testimony on his video today of a guy cured of Crohn's doing carnivore diet. Exactly. Yeah. You do a carnivore diet, you will improve. Your gut will improve because taurine is one of the key things to regulate the gut. And so if you eat plenty of meat, you're going to get enough. You can supplement and actually accelerate that a bit more, but at the end of the day, yeah, that's what I thought. I said 18 plus, but yeah, 20. Yeah, 1 gram's fine for the medium doggy. Yeah. Yeah. The only difference is most of these people don't know why a lot of meat is good for you. It's the taurine. That other video that I'm making this will explain all that this week, the importance of regulating the gut. Yes, I've done a video on the stomach with taurine, but yes, we need to do one on the full gut to cover that properly so people understand why a species-appropriate diet is superior to a veganerized or any other sad diet. Shit is getting serious when Harry Googles the average weight of a dog. Yes, exactly. I didn't know it. I mean, Trace said it's 20, but there's a whole lot of different when I'm looking at. I'm going, what the hell, so, and I approximated it from the stuff that I was looking at. And there is difference also between the male and female. That's, 20 is sort of for the actual male medium, but for females it's slightly lower, around probably about 15 or 16. So I sort of went for 18 as the middle sort of approximation, being sex neutral. I don't know what the dog identifies as. Yes. Which, yeah, that's right. Would be a large cat. So it'd be about, so you'd be looking at about 300 or 250 to 300 milligrams for a cat in that regard. But again, I don't know what their physiological requirements are. That's just comparison with humans. I think they may have lower or higher. I'm not sure. I think cats can't synthesize any. They basically need to get it from the diet. So theirs may be higher, but I haven't looked at the actual physiological requirements for nutrients. I know there are cats that are getting a lot of strange diseases, which are related to taurine insufficiency. So cats may require per kilo of body weight slightly more than dogs. So you may be having to double that, go something like 0.5 gram for cats. But that's without checking. It's not going to harm them, So, I mean, but it'll only help them along. But I'm not sure of the exact sort of requirements. So, because I haven't looked into it, simple as that. I'm just throwing 1.5 kilograms lamb in the crock pot with lemon and rosemary. Sounds absolutely fantastic. Sonia? Yes, rosemary really gives that beautiful flavor. I have to say, I use it for my liver sticks that I bake. Yeah, I've got to use, I just have to use rosemary. It just changes that flavor. It gives it really a really nice flavor. I put it in with milk and rosemary in the fridge for about a couple of hours. Sometimes I just do it the previous day and I go, okay, I'll bake them tomorrow and then do it that way. So it's, yes, one of my favorite ways of actually making liver sticks and eating them. Yes, it is. It is definitely an inflammatory autoimmune disorder. Yep. Meat-based diet does definitely help quite a bit. And also vitamin D silences a lot of the autoimmune genes. So getting it to very high levels usually sorts that out. Like I did with Lukey. Going carnivore plus vitamin D really helped him silence those damn genes that had been upregulated on his kibble diet. The most influential spreader of C19 misinformation is called Joseph and not Joe. Dr. McCullough is informed because he made money by speaking up. That's proof enough. Oh, look, the world is a crazy, crazy place nowadays. People explain things and point the obvious out, but it's like talking to a brick wall with some people. You ask people simple things. Why am I required when whether I am or not jabbed, I can still spread? So what's the difference? Where are you being protected? And people just look at you, oh, well, I've done it. It's like, I've done it. It's like, you should be doing it as well. Why do you get off from, it's sort of this really, give us a break. Just because you are stupid enough to stick it into you, it doesn't mean all of us are just brainwashed, going to the slaughterhouse like you. I mean, this is the madness with some of these people. The propaganda is just so intense. I turn on some of the. I don't watch TV, as you guys know. I'm really against it. I just get my sources by my own research on what's happening internationally, listening to geopolitical speakers that know what they're talking about in different sort of environments and stuff like that. So if you listen to the media, you'd think the Russians are about to make a move, but when you listen to some geopoliticians and look at their past practices and attitudes, very different. So they're just trying to get a deal, putting the pressure on. But you've got hawks in the actual White House that basically, are out for vengeance because, for whatever reason, and let's not forget who lied and who basically backstabbed who in these so-called agreements between the two sides in that regard. And most of these territories were part of Russia in the past when it was before the Soviet Union, and then they were handed over by Khrushchev back in the 50s as part of administrative purposes. And so you had a whole lot of populations, actual Russians, on the wrong side of the border when the Soviet Union collapsed. That's where that problem lies. Now, it could be resolved in other ways, where confederation or a federation structure, some sort of autonomy or whatever could be created to provide security for these people who feel like let's say, a discriminated minority in that part. So there are other issues like that of concern of minority rights and all that, and the current constitutional protections are not really there, and the politicians in Kiev haven't really shown. Both sides have probably done a lot of wrong things, so nobody's completely innocent, but there are also some historical things and other reasons like that, but there's no nuancing. It's just one group's bad and the other one isn't, which is nonsense. So I'll criticize Putin where I do. I do criticize him on some of the usage of the Orthodox Church in Russia against the Greek Orthodox Church and some of the other churches and some of the other stuff that he does. He's done some good things, it's like all politicians, some good, some bad things and all that. Nobody's perfect and all that, but I'm a bit more eclectic with my criticisms and do take into consideration some historical reasons for these sort of things and all that. So it's easy to jump on one wagon or another, very easy. But unfortunately, when you look at the standard media, whether it's the Russian media, they're basically a mouthpiece for Putin, and whether you're looking at the American media, they're a mouthpiece for the deep state in the US, which is what Biden represents. So free media doesn't exist, guys. It's just we've been lied to for a very long time. Let's put it that way. Remember, the elites own the media, and whether it's private or public hands, it's still controlled by the elites in all these countries, and they put out the propaganda they want to use you as cannon fodder for their little conflicts. You do the dirty work, they get rich, while you bleed on the battlefield. That's pretty much how it works. Has been working like that since the pharaohs, just to bring you up to date for those who are unaware. So yes, but unfortunately, that is a reality. That doesn't mean I'm not a patriot and I wouldn't defend my country if somebody invaded. Don't get me wrong, but at the same time, going and basically brutally attacking somebody else is not my cup of tea of basically being a good, nation either. So let's put it this way. And I'm not going to basically go and fight so Biden's son can actually make more money in that country, or you know what I mean. Yes. Harry, do you think it would be possible to make deuterium-depleted water by irradiation of water in a glass container with UVB? Yeah. It'd be expensive, because if you're only exposing it to actual natural UVA and UVB, probably wouldn't be a problem, but it would be very inefficient. It has to do with the height, the elevation. So unless you could take it up to an alpine level where the actual UV is much more intense, that's why people put sunscreen on and glasses and everything when they go up to like high mountains, because the UV is much stronger than what it is on the ground. So if you're on the ground, the efficiency would be very poor. But, because remember, you're only going from 155 parts per million watts on the ground to, if you're actually up in an elevation like a high mountain like the Alpines, you come down to 146 like Evian water. So 146. So you're basically down from 155. You're only down 9 parts per million. So it's not massive, and it's like the Italian Alps, which are much lower, they're not as high, is about 148. So, Perrier water and stuff like that, those sort of alpine waters from Italy, about 148. Similar in Greece, 148 approximately. They may be just slightly in the northern part of Greece where it's even more mountainous than Italy. So I'm not 100, maybe an extra 1. So you don't get much. You get, and then if you're using like a UV type lamp or stuff like that, it'd have to be UVA. I think that has the most effect on it. Most lamps are UVB, so that wouldn't help. and nobody's going to take a whole bunch of water right up to the top of the mountain and leave it there and then come back and get it. It's just not practical, Raymond. It's just not practical in a sense. Yeah. I wish it was, but it's not, Maybe all we could hope is that people become more enlightened in the future, and we could actually recommend it as municipal water to actually put it through a proper factory processing to basically lower the deuterium level of the water that's supplied. But until then, it's an expensive process and it's not going to be very available. The only true water source that you have in nature that's deuterium depleted is green leaves that are basically radiation's actually hitting those through photosynthesis, and actually makes the water light water, reduces the deuterium to very low levels. I mean, it's as low as fat. Forget about alpine water. It is as low as, we're talking about around the 100 odd parts per million, 100, 105, 110. That we're talking about, in some cases, lower than fat. So compared to alpine water, it's shits all over. And this is what these tribal people do. When they do, they usually hydrate with their own body fat. But when they do, they usually take these sort of leaves and, you get the fluid out of them into some sort of container. Usually it's like an egg, like an ostrich egg, which the Bushmen of the Kalahari, the sand people, use, something like that. So it's not a practical thing you can do. If there was, I'd be doing it myself. So, you probably, if you put tap water out exposed to UV, maybe you would knock 1 or 2 parts per million and take it from 155 to 154 or 53. Basically, still at the sugar level, more or less. It's not practical. So, unfortunately, it's that's why we call it the fractionation of due to elevation. So you're actually getting much higher intensity of UV radiation, enough to basically knock out those neutrons. Yes. General Jane, good to see you. Yeah, so wish it was an easy way. I'd be recommending it to everyone. I'd be doing it myself. So not that I'm not looking. I am looking, believe me. But still, it's family joke. Fatty Finn. Okay. My grandparents used to call me Fatty Finn, the biscuit tin. Okay. Was actually skinny, but loved the biscuits. Yes. Yes. A biscuit man. Fair enough. That's actually rhymes pretty well. Pretty good. I think Bart and Garlantham had a huge falling out. Yeah, they did. Out as Bart is like, never heard of him. When someone mentions Garlantham on a live stream, yeah, I know, he will not reply. Just completely up. Yes. I don't subscribe to, because basically he was trying to put the pressure on me to basically, and being critical with Bart. And I sort of said, look, I'm not interested. If you guys have a disagreement between each other, why are you dragging me in? And so it was easy to walk away from Garland Farm and just say, leave it at that. But I think the criticism was pretty piss poor. And it was nonsense, basically. You're trying to get me into trouble, aren't you? You're trying to get me into trouble. Yes, we know what he is. Something between your legs? Uh, G'day, Sammy. Good to see you, mate. So what Tracy's trying to do, trying to get me to say rude things online. Oh, she's a bad girl. He bragged that 95% done. Oh, God. Former WF employee retiring, net election, job done, going back to his old job. God, it's an absolute joke. Don't worry, there'll be plenty of, you know, whenever any of these characters leave politics, they usually have a line of jobs lined up for them by industry players, and then they go back as consultants to consult for those industries to their mates in politics. It's a revolving door. It's a gravy train all the way. Yes, for them, pretty much. Sure, good to see you. Probably been here for a while. Oh, you got another one there. Yeah, media has been, yes, bastardized. It's pretty much big. Yeah, it's been for a long time. It's got worse now. At least in the past, they put the pretense that they sort of were a bit balanced. Now it's just full propaganda. There's no balance, and if you disagree with them, it's like you're the enemy. It's quite clear and blatant propaganda. Now it's like, you're in a soccer team. It's not even media. It's not information. So we're on this team and they're on that team, and we hate them. They hate us, and they're basically just different representations of different powerful interest groups that have a few disagreements, and everybody's jumping on Team CNN, Team Fox. I mean, they're all the same guys. They're all the same. The difference is on, you could say, the C19. Team Fox has probably got the better arguments, um, in that regard. But on other issues, they're just both as bad, and they're peddling interest groups to a large extent. So, yes, well said, Shelley. Well said, exactly. That's unfortunately the reality. And they've been doing it for a long time. I mean, in ancient Greece, the way they broke the democracy, the direct democracy, is by creating a class of what they called orators. These were paid speakers by the aristocrats, and they would go around saying their misinformation over and over again. And as a consequence, when you say a lie for long enough, people start believing it. So that's how they undermined certain good citizens that are actually putting some good ideas. And eventually they were able to put an aristocrat in power, like Pericles. Well, he did some positive things. On the other hand, he basically drove Athens into war with Sparta, which devastated Athens as as a society. So yeah, careful who you follow. Yeah, hopefully he'll stick to it. You know, does he overcook? If he's overcooking his meat, make sure that he's doing a taurine supplement, because that's important. Taurine is really important to sort out the gut, and vitamin D as well. So both are important. If he's not out sunbaking, get him on vitamin D, supplements. Ah, you're over there now, are you? Oh, okay. I'm in Chinanda area. Might actually prefer Eastern Europe at this point. Okay, yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's right. You'd actually gone over, hadn't you? Oh, I forgot about that. Sorry about that. Yeah, you did actually move over there for a job. Yeah, that's right. I'll pass the keeping down tip to some families in that region through. Yeah, fair enough. Send them some helmets. Just joking. Yeah, yeah, they do help and all that. But at the end of the day, you need to support your detox systems. In your primary detox systems, one of your major ones when it comes to this is your liver and your ability to, utilize your cytochrome P450, and taurine and choline play a big role in making sure that it works, which is animal foods, works well. But it depends on the level of exposure. You can have too much exposure where there's a rate limiting effect where not enough enzymes to do the job, and you can be quite sick for some time until it clears out or get out of that environment. And there are some medications that can actually accelerate the cleaning up as well. What are my thoughts on glutathione raising properties on raw dairy and raw egg whites? Look, your immune system is improved on raw dairy due to the lactoferrin. That's, upregulating interferon in that regard. But there are amino acids in all animal foods that actually increase glutathione. So it's not only milk, it's not only eggs, but also, regulate other animal foods, meats and stuff like that, that also provide the precursors as well. So it's not just in that regard. But at the end of the day, if you've got very high insulin, your glutathione is going to be in the toilet. So it's very important that you're in some sort of low carb state. That's one of the most important things, and you're less so then your glutathione status is going to be much better in that regard. Then there are going to be genetic differences. Glutathione can be expressed differently based on genetics as well. It's not just the foods that you eat, but genetics as well. So has it all, so to speak. Certain foods are important. A lot of people sort of get all the other stuff from the meats and all that, but they eat no eggs, and they eat, and as a consequence, or no organ meats either, and they don't get enough selenium. And selenium is really important for glutathione. And sometimes that can be the rate limiting thing, mineral, selenium. And they just, even though they've got everything else, and eggs are a good source of selenium in that regard, and a lot of the animal foods as well. If they're eating enough protein, they should technically get enough selenium. So it's when they are doing these strange ketogenic carnivore diets of very high fat and very low protein is when they just don't get enough selenium to basically, help produce enough glutathione. So that's where the rate limiting effect, especially some of the recent stuff that I've heard about, 15 and 18% type meat levels, which I think is just absolutely stupid, to be blunt, absolutely stupid. But this is what some people are promoting, these high fat keto type carnivore diets, contraindicated. That's not how humans ate. You look at all tribal people, meat and fat, pretty much. That's how it works. Even if you do a high protein type approach, let's say you do 70% in terms of grams. I'm always talking quantities. I'm not talking about kilocalories or anything like that. Protein is not energy. Well, it can be if you basically have no fat on board and you're not taking in any other energy source. Yeah, then the body's got no other option to break down muscle. But that is a very, only happens in a rapid starvation mode or in a state of extreme famine. We're talking about normal physiology here of general carnivores. In those sort of things, though, even if you're doing a very high type protein, so let's say about 70%, so you're getting 70 for every 30 grams of fat, you're taking in 70 grams of basically protein. So in terms of percentages, when we're looking at 4 times 70, 280, and 30 times 9, 70 plus. It's nearly a 1-to-1, as you can see. But remember, one is energy, one isn't. I'm just doing this the kilocalorie type thing because heat is not what we're actually measuring, but just to show people that even if you're having, it's nearly a 1-to-1 in that regard. So if you've got plenty of onboard energy, that means fat around the waistline, you can do a sort of a 70-30 mix. So for every 70 grams, you're getting 30 grams of basically fat in that regard. So that's still about 49%. So, when we're looking at the density of that. But the reality is that's, normally I usually say 1-to-1 gram, for women slightly a bit more fat because their endocrine system requires it. So 1.2 to 0.8. But even if you did like a higher type of protein intake, like 70% and 30%, and you had a lot of onboard fat, not a problem. You're not going to get into rabbit starvation at those levels. You're still getting enough fat in, and you've got fat on board for the extra energy required. But you still need in the digestive system, you still need a certain proportion of fat, because you've got a whole lot of minerals and vitamins and other things that need to be absorbed and require fat to be around. So, this is really important. So you can't go completely 100% lean. That's going to cause problems. So in terms of digestion and stuff like that. So, and that's when I talk about high protein approach to do a cut. That's what I mean. It's not devoid of fat. There's still fat, but it's a sort of style. You can do it, with meats that don't have too much fat on them, and eggs, which have got, a certain proportion of fat as well, and all that. You can do a steak and egg type thing as a cut, which is what traditionally people used to do. The only difference is when they were bulking up and building up, what they were doing is they were taking a whole lot of dairy fat and a whole lot of additional, like cream and milk and stuff like that. Excessive amount of energy as they were building up their tissue. And when they were doing a cut, they were doing more of a steak and eggs. So, which is no different than when people want to do a cut. They remove the butter and remove that. They just have the steak and eggs, no butter, none of the other stuff, the liquid fats. And that's how you do when you're trying to do recomposition of your body. You do it more in that regard. And, in nature, people would be engaging the Randall cycle seasonally in this interglacial period, some sugars and all that to engage the Randall cycle to fatten up for the winter, for the leaner periods. And further back when we're in the glacial periods, those animals had more subcutaneous fat. So the quantity of fat we were taking was much bigger. So we had enough fat in the diet to basically provide for our energy needs. We didn't need to engage any Randall cycle in those days, so to speak. So it all, varies depending on which time, place on the planet and all that. Anyway, I like getting into that sort of stuff because it's stuff that some of you guys have never heard of, and it's really gives you a bit of a better understanding about the dynamics of physiology in different circumstances and different environments, which then demystifies a lot of things, why things work in a certain way. Really important. Anyway, I've got about 6 minutes. I'm going to try and cruise through this because I need to get myself ready and then get the hell out of here. And then I'll see you lovely people, whoever is still awake and turns up later on. We do have good immune systems. We bloody do. Exactly. You know, rapid clearing, you know, as I said, T lymphocyte, Carney power. Yes. Basically, my T lymphocytes saw and destroyed C19. You will be exterminated. Yes. Yes. I like Daleks. Carney Daleks. Powerful Carney Daleks. We hypothetically me, 2 years carnivore, good health, yada yada. Went to a wedding Friday, waiting till Tuesday before going back to work, just in case. I wouldn't worry too much. And that sort of yada yada for non Australians is you know, sort of a, what would you call it? It's like saying and you know, it's like, you know, carnival good health, you know, sort of etc. etc. Yeah, that's probably the best thing. Yada yada is a sort of an Australian equivalent to etc. etc. That's it. Just for those who don't know the Australian lingo. Who are good researchers to read about light and its impact on health? Curious to get into the nitty gritty. Roy in the evening. He's a great aficionado on light issues. He wears his special glasses as well. Yeah. Do ask him. Very knowledgeable guy. He's my twin sidekick. Yes. Very important for circadian rhythms. Very important in that regard. And, you know, remember, you've got melanopsin in your eyes. You should get out in the morning to set the day as the, you know, the early dawn and dusk. Those 2 times and the middle of the day are the times when you should expose your body to natural light, because it syncs with the circadian rhythms. There's this sort of cycle that comes down around about 11ish, then goes back up a bit, and then sort of flows off. And it's these circadian cycles. And it's really dusk, that middle of the day around 11ish, and basically then in the dawn period. Sorry, the dusk period. Yeah, the dawn and then the dusk period in the evening. It's to synchronize your body with the circadian rhythms. Yes, he is my ultra ego. Yes, exactly. Twin ultra ego. Let's get it right. But specific people, no, I've done my own research. I look at the actual science research studies and stuff like that. It is something that I'm going to be doing later this year, HD, and getting into the weeds in terms of light modulation of via the melanopsin in our skin and eye. You know, so I hope you look forward to that sort of stuff. It's going to be interesting stuff, and I'll have a few nuanced views on that, which some of these researchers haven't picked up on. So, but I'm not giving anything away until then. So, duty calls, not a problem. Galapagos gal, you go away and have a good day. G'day, Andy. Since being double, yes. I find my heart rate reacts differently to exercise, stays low for ages, then comes up after about 10 minutes. Now a bit worried about going out running. Thoughts. I would be on 10 grams of taurine, as long as you're not taking you're not on blood pressure meds. I do have a video about lithium and blood pressure meds. That can be a problem, and information on that. So you do check that out. because taurine it's an osmolyte that can interact with a number of other things, so it's very important. But if you get to that level, and then you basically get your vitamin D levels, but the first thing that I would do is I would I'll do a 3-day fast to really just remove the old immune system. And then after I've done that, removed it, then I would basically ramp up the vitamin D, ramp up to really produce new healthy through stem cell activation of the bone marrow with the vitamin D, and also the importance in types of protection and senescent protection of and also it actually increases the quantity that you actually end up putting into the thymus with taurine. So this combination, 10 grams of taurine, 10,000 minimum, coming right out of a fast, I would go up to 20,000 IUs for about a week, and then I would drop back to 10,000 and stay on 10,000. I don't know what your sun exposure is. If your sun exposure is fairly good every day, well, you're probably getting enough vitamin D then. In that regard, I just stick to the taurine then. So it depends on those sort of things. But you have to be certain and have tested your vitamin D. If you've got getting daily exposure to vitamin D, then probably go 20,000 initially and then drop down to 5 if you're getting enough sun. But that's only if you're getting enough sun. If you're indoors most of the day and you're not getting enough sun exposure, go to 10,000 IUs. You need to basically really get your T lymphocytes really high, and you need them to go in and start clearing out all these foreign proteins. That's what really needs to happen. You need to clear out, and you need to regulate. The other thing is, if there's been any damage, like from myocarditis or anything like that. Remember, I had heart damage 11 years ago when I had double bypass surgery, and my last scan that was done in 2018 showed, which is now 4 years, but showed zero fibrosis. That's what taurine does. It's an antifibrotic. It breaks down fibrosis. It's actually really good even for people who have strokes, like stroke effects or whatever. The best thing you can put is ram shitloads of taurine into them to reduce the damage in the brain. It basically will protect their brain from, and even in incidents, like I don't know why sports physiologists aren't using it. It also prevents remodeling, tissue remodeling, like the left ventricular for people who are athletes, like marathon runners and stuff like that basically do end up with left ventricular growth and problems with their heart. So taurine is kidneys, heart, brain, those sort of tissues, and liver. You've got massive amounts, but the heart has the most taurine concentration. That's why it's a good source, like eating hearts, of taurine. But it's really critical that you get your taurine levels up. As long as you're not getting you don't have any meds, which you need then adjusting things and all that. But I suspect you probably don't. It really sort of can help sort out any fibrotic tissue damage or stuff like that. And it also helps with arrhythmias and stuff like that as well in normalizing the heart function, which is really important in that regard. So it has multiple purposes in the body, but it will take a couple of months. So don't expect immediate results. These things don't happen overnight, but you will see improvements in the coming months if you do that. But go slow, because it is an osmolyte and rebalances the electrolytes and everything else. You'll probably notice that if you ever had any crampings or anything like that, they'll all go away, because it helps keep inside the cell both magnesium and potassium. You lose actually less. So do not take potassium or do not take magnesium supplements when you're on taurine. That's the advantage of an animal-based diet. When you eat a lot of meat, you get a lot of taurine, which basically means you don't have to worry about electrolyte issues like everybody on the keto diet. it becomes a non-issue. Actually, there's not this week. It's going to have to be next week when I do that. I've got all the PDFs and everything ready to go, but I just haven't. I'll see. Who knows? There's some research that shows intracellular how potassium is kept in. So it'll be interesting for people, just those who want the evidence. Yeah. So yeah, I know. Look, mate. There's a number of people that are basically Dom in Ireland. He's actually done the same thing because he had to travel because his jobs requires it. He's an engineer and he was in the Middle East last time. So the only way he could get to his job site is basically he had to travel. So he had no option. So basically he's been on taurine and he's been on vitamin D, and he seems to be pretty fine at this stage anyway. So that's your best option. There's not many other options. There is a protocol that, but that you have to go through doctors. And I don't know how practical it is. If you go to a regular GP and say, oh, I'd like to basically use this method, they'll probably look at you in a very, very funny way. That's not there. I'm going to, probably on Wednesday, I'll probably make a little video just promoting that other protocol. So if people want to add that together with the vitamin D and the taurine, I think the T lymphocytes are the big player to clean out this sort of stuff. These are sort of medications which seem to help clear it out as well. Any foreign proteins out of these cells that are creating this low grade sort of inflammation, reactivity in the body. But yeah, I've got the information somewhere here. I'll probably link it like I do with the other stuff, and I'll link it back to my drive so people can just download the information and grab it. So I may even do it on this. I may even I'm going to post some other stuff on. I'm going to pin after this live stream. So yeah, I'll see. I haven't decided. But I think there may be a requirement to do a little video just to provide information for people. Yeah, I'll force myself to do it. There you go. Okay. Yeah, it is definitely. Too much talking. Since the intro of kibble for cats and dogs, thyroid problems, cat hypothyroidism and hypothyroid, I've gone through the roof. Yeah, I know. Yeah, and so is cancer as well. Yes, everything's deranged in the poor kitties and doggies world. Good for the business. The cost of basically now people are actually taking out health insurance for their animals because it's so expensive. Veterinary services, it's ridiculous. All they need is just give them raw food and they'll be healthy, the animals, like they used to be. Friggin' crazy. Making animals as sick as us. Yeah, it is cheaper to add. Actually, it is cheaper to add yourself. Yeah, it's definitely, Paul. It's that I don't recommend basically buying the expensive. I would just say basically throw them a steak, throw them a bit of in their water, and they can just lick it up. When they're actually hydrating. Do it that way. It's easy. NACST. G'day, Harry. Checking the FYI. I weigh 93.4, 3 weeks ago today. 96, more muscle, less fat, nearly a month. Good for you on carnivore diet. I'm also using taurine supplement prior to workout. Good. Plus liver tabs. I'm feeling great. Fantastic. Yep. Just make sure you're balancing your retinol with some vitamin D, and you're good to go. So yeah. The other thing is, you may, as a vasodilator, if you're quite young, I wouldn't bother. I don't know what your age is, but if you're middle aged and stuff like that, L-citrulline, 1 gram before training is pretty good. It'll actually give you longer endurance with your training, if that's your goal, that is. But you should never do excessive. Otherwise, Uncle Bart will come and actually give you a spanking. Yeah, well, you had to wait until you sorted out your thyroid before you could actually get the real big gains anyway, which is good. Yes, they very, very much are. Very much so. Yes. Clown world in that part of the world. Yes. Trump is expecting to open up his new site called Truth Social. Yeah, look, he's actually applying censorship as well. I think people basically looking at it. There was an American guy out of New York, and he was actually looking at it and says, well, they got all these restrictions. They want to make it family friendly. So basically, it's not going to be, it's not going to be uncensored. It may even end up being more censored than YouTube. So, because they don't have a child, where YouTube has got if you can actually make content for children or not children, and it's promoted to children, not children. There's when I put the video up, I've got my default's not for children, so it doesn't get promoted, and so there's less restrictions. When it's for children, it goes through. I mean, you have to be even careful. The most innocuous word. So yeah, so that's may not be as as true social as many people think. We are watching all these sickos being taken out one by one. Zuckerberg, Maldo last week. Yes, but I don't think that Trump's part of the establishment as well. Let's not forget. So he's not going to be a truth seeker. None of them are. You know me. I'm a direct democracy guy. But he's definitely better than Biden on a number of issues in that regard. But still part of the establishment. They're all the same, unfortunately. There are not really clean, people that we can really, that have got a good moral fiber and really give a shit about the average person currently out there. So unfortunately, it's the reality. Unless you got, it's money politics. It's really hard for the average person, a decent person, to basically, like in the old days, to get anywhere. If you go back, you could actually find regular people, like Truman, while some people may have not agreed with all Truman's politics, he was a man with strong morals. He wasn't, but you don't get people. And he was from the Midwest. So he wasn't from one of the big smokes and well connected. Now, he fell into the position because Roosevelt died, but still, you don't get to even be a running mate, let alone the top person nowadays, unless you're loaded and well connected. It's just the way it is. It's just the money politics is just incredible. I feel the same way. Yes. Direct democracy now. Yeah, exactly. It's just pretty much what it is. Far left, far right, and they make jingoistic propaganda. They don't really have real solutions. We had statesmen and women in the past that basically really had good solutions. Not always perfect, but at least gave a damn of trying to make things work. Now it's more, how can I knock the other side down to basically promote and get on top? It's sort of, like tribal war, but no solutions. They don't really care. It's just basically, how can we use people as cannon fodder to basically get power. It reminds me of the old gladiatorial games in the end of the Roman Empire, how corruption literally took a hold of the entire empire. That's what pretty much destroyed the Western Roman Empire, where the Eastern one, the Orthodox one, kept on going for another 1,000 years. But then they as well succumbed to corruption and many other things and declined as well. Yes, unfortunately, it's the way it goes. Sometimes when you're building a society, people put their effort in and all that, and then once they've built it, they lose focus and very easily become, what can I get out of it? And then over time they erode the great society and institutions they created. And it's the way it goes, unfortunately, this sort of cycle, build and decline. Any downside with a topping up with grass-fed whey protein? Not really. I've used it in the past. I've used it for elderly people like my father to get more protein into them until they got used to eating more meat. So, yep, can be used. And I sort of combine it with leucine and taurine for additional to boost, because he was sarcopenic in his mid-70s. Now he's 87 and he's like an ox again, like a damn ox. Oh, okay. Yeah, look, I know I'm sick of it as well. Last time I actually went with the truckers, I was putting all the sort of messages about the stuff, the bullshit, and I just kept on getting. Eventually, they started knocking out some of the stuff remained there. Luckily, I found that if I tried to put it as my own post, it got removed completely. But I found that if I went down a certain amount of levels and I actually posted against somebody else, it got missed. And that was the only way I could actually put these messages about the levels in Britain, the one that I did the video. So I didn't put my video, I just put the information there, the two amount of information, so people can go and see the freedom of information and go and see the Wikipedia, how many, and do a comparison between the two. So it was just basically saying, I'm not telling you, here's the evidence, go and take a look at it. This is the difference. This is more like a severe seasonal flu. It's not something like 1918, where 3 times as many, or basically the bubonic plague, where a third of the population was wiped out. That's really a true pandemic, Then you go for the hills, then you hide under those sort of circumstances. But yeah, it's bullshit, I got no idea. It was actually basically submitted to the TGA before Moderna. So it makes no sense. I think to a large extent, they'd actually, if I'm not being conspiratorial, I would say they had some people say that whole lot of orders of previous stuff. And so as a consequence, they left this for later because they wanted to get rid of the backlog of orders of stuff that they'd already purchased. That's one theory. Second theory is that the certain politicians that are close to both Pfizer and Moderna seem to have a lot of, let's say, friends that are close to the minister. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. So could that be I can't claim that, but it could be a second possibility. And the third possibility is they waited until the FDA took, because they seem to follow everything the FDA does. And so, but then once the Europeans started putting it through, they sort of moved ahead of the FDA. Since they found the Europeans tick off on it, they ticked off on it. Now, do they follow the leader? Don't know. It seems very strange. There's 3 possibilities. There may be even more that we're unaware of. But I'm just putting out the possibilities. The reason, I'm not privy to that information, so I can speculate, but I could be very close when I speculate, or I could be miles away from the reality. So because I tend to have a scientific approach, if I don't know something, I just say I don't know, and in this case, I don't. But there are 3 possible options why it happened, but do I actually know? No idea, mate. But there'll be plenty out there you'll find that will speculate wildly, even with zero information. It's just the way a lot of people are. Rat Boy came out and said that fructose from fruit in season is not an issue for metabolically healthy individuals. Crazy. Any merit to this claim? No. First of all, he doesn't consume in season. He consumes all year round fructose, both fruit and honey. So he's misleading people if he, because he doesn't do that himself. And then in season, yes, it's only for a very short amount of time. Most parts of the planet, like if you're in the tropics, it's 2 times a year seasonally for about a month each, or maybe a bit longer sometimes. So you're looking at still about a third of the year that it's available in the tropics. When you're looking at the non-tropical areas, you're looking at about anywhere between seasonally available a month to maybe 6 weeks, a month and a half, until it falls all on the ground and rots. So it's not around for very long, for a very short amount, 6 weeks, This is in a temperate environment. So most of the world, whether it's in Australia, New South Wales and below, or whether you're in most of Europe, most of the northern parts of Asia and the middle parts of Asia, they're already in a temperate zone, and they pretty much only have for about at max 6. So we'll go in between the 4 weeks and the 6 weeks, 5 weeks. So 5 divided by 52 is about 10% of the year. So 90% of the year, you've got no access whatsoever. So, but basically, he's doing it all year round, Bruce. So I would say he's wrong about that. Now, is there a deuterium depleting effect in that's as long as you get out in the sun in summer when you're actually consuming this. Not everybody does. So if you're exposing yourself, all your body, not just your hands and knees and a bit of your face, the whole body, full body, you can deplete 19 parts per million per hour. So you're not going to deplete a lot. You can gain more energy through your photoreceptors, but you're not going to basically you're not going to really basically deplete as much when it comes to deuterium. So yes, you can deplete if you're outdoors all day and you're only consuming very little seasonal, but you can't do it on a daily basis like he does. So it's bullshit, absolute bullshit. But he doesn't even know about deuterium, so his arguments of seasonality are not even based on any logical, credible argument, let alone anything else. And so I suspect he, as a doctor, would be indoors for most of the day doing his practice, and he's not going to be exposed to UV, so, and it's UVA primarily. So, a UVB lamp in the home isn't going to help. So it's the UVA. And the most intense time UVA is around is early in the morning and in the evening, not in the middle of the day. So, even that, most people will get wrong. That's another reason why you should be out in the mornings and in the evenings. Dawn and dusk, very important for those purposes as well. Not only modulating your system and pretty much Yes, the circadian rhythms. And I just realized I have to basically go. So I'm going to run right through these, pop them up so people can watch them at any other point in that regard. I'm going to rack off because I should have been finished at about 10 minutes ago. And I'm not. I'm going to be late getting to Dad's. So yes, those wonderful reporters on ABC. Yes, another propaganda piece. That's a government propaganda piece. Actually, government one that complies in that regard. Follow the money, exactly. Always follow the dosh. It's one of the easiest things to do. Follow the dosh, and it's you hardly ever get it wrong when you do that. You're welcome, mate, and you're welcome, Tracy, and yep, you're welcome, mate, as well, Rob. And I am blasting out of here. Thank you, everyone. And in 4 hours' time from now, we'll have the Eurasia live stream. So I will see all you lovely people then. Sammy, thanks, mate. And we'll get into it. Yes, it's very much tied. Mitochondrial health is foundational to basically health. And so as a consequence, yes, deuterium is part of that important story. Very much part of that important story. Anyway, see you guys. I'm out of here now. Please hit the like button on your way out.